The doomsday of torrential rain has arrived, yet I accidentally caught my husband and best friend being intimate. Furious, I rushed inside. At that moment, my husband dropped his mask. They threw me out the window into the floodwaters without a second thought. But in the next instant, I miraculously traveled back to the day before the apocalypse. Seeing how close they were, I was overcome with disgust. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared before my eyes.
Something like a system panel appeared in front of me. In the top left corner, there were 3 red numbers showing 091. In the center of the screen, there was also a small raft. There are 91 days left until the apocalypse. A mechanical system voice sounded, startling me. I looked up at the 2 across from me and found them looking normal. So this voice is only heard by me. What is this thing? I wondered in my heart. Hello, player. I am the Doomsday Survival System. In 91 days, the apocalypse will come. All land will be submerged by a continuous torrential rain and flooded. The system seemed to hear my thoughts and answered immediately the next second after I questioned. I tentatively asked in my mind, what is this small raft for? Sure enough, the system replied, I am the cruise ship upgrade system. As long as the player keeps supplying me with materials, the raft will gradually upgrade. At the max level, it will be a cruise ship 500 meters long and 70 meters wide. The cruise ship has all kinds of facilities you want, endless gourmet food, a magnificent casino. You can even create countless handsome guys of various shapes to serve you. The prerequisite is to upgrade. Then this cruise ship, can it be used in reality? When the apocalypse comes, the cruise ship will materialize and appear before the player. Only those authorized by the player in the system can board this cruise ship. Hearing this, I immediately got excited, a smile appearing on my face. But Pan Chi's voice interrupted me. Are you, woman, crazy? I looked up, wiped off my smile, and coldly stared at him. Pan Chi suddenly, in a rage, picked up a large delivery box and threw it at me. Then he furiously kicked the boxes on the floor. Pointing at me, he yelled, I told you to stop buying this cheap crap. You deaf or something? Before I could answer, Bai Yi suddenly chimed in. Xiao Yuan, I've told you many times too. These delivery boxes attract cockroaches. Be careful, or the house will be full of them. After saying that, she pretended to be scared and leaned closer to Pan Chi. On the surface, Bai Yi is my best friend, in my past life, but she secretly had an affair with my boyfriend. To steal Pan Chi away from me, she often subtly belittled me in front of him. Like right now, I always leave the delivery boxes outside, but she deliberately makes it sound disgusting to make Pan Chi hate me even more, and Pan Chi totally falls for it. After hearing this, he looked at me with even more disgust. In my past life, I was pathetically naive. To win Pan Chi back, I actually gave him everything I had, holding nothing back, trying to move him, but in return, they took over my house. They also took all the supplies I had worked hard to stockpile, and claimed them as their own. In the end, they threw me out, barely alive. Now that I've been reborn, I finally see through the true colors of this pair of scumbags. When Pan Chi put on that contemptuous face again, I snapped back. I'll buy whatever I want, you have no say in it. He clearly didn't expect that I, always so docile, would talk back like this. Eyes wide, he said, how dare you talk to me like that? Aren't you afraid I'll dump you? I sneered, that's exactly what I want. Before Pan Chi could react, I rolled my eyes and kicked both of them out. Pan Chi pounded on the door like crazy, yelling, Lin Wuyuan, how dare you do this to me? Now, apologize to me immediately, or else, I'll never forgive you. Who cares about your forgiveness? I crossed my arms, and through the video doorbell, watched Pan Chi's impotent rage, finding it amusing. When the apocalypse comes, he won't even know how he dies. Not wanting to deal with him anymore, I turned off the doorbell, and went back to organizing supplies. The system just mentioned, as long as you put supplies into the system, you can upgrade the small Ra. I still don't know how many supplies are needed to max it out. I looked at the self-heating hotpot and instant noodles I bought, and started putting them into the system. Soon, the system beeped. New supplies stored successfully. Experience increased by 30 points. Small raft upgraded to a regular raft. Congratulations, player. The supplies I just put in turned into a tiny icon and appeared in my warehouse. So, the system doesn't eat the supplies. They're just stored there temporarily. I asked myself. That's right. The supplies a player stores are just temporarily kept in the system. Once the boat is materialized, the player can take supplies from the warehouse as needed. Sounds like a really convenient system. In my past life, besides Tan Chi and Bai Yi, even those neighbors came to fight over my supplies. Now they're stored in the system, no one can take them away. Actually, my habit of hoarding comes from a lack of security since childhood. Only when surrounded by plenty of supplies do I feel a little peace of mind. Plus, in recent years, I got hooked on apocalyptic novels, so I've done quite a bit of research on what supplies to stockpile. But I never waste. I always manage to finish all the food right before its expiration date. Pan Chi always thought buying discounted items was embarrassing, and Bai Yi would add fuel to the fire, describing me as a petty woman. Looking at it now, it's actually a good thing. Let her take out the trash. Saves me the trouble of doing it myself. Otherwise, by the time I'm busy preparing for the coming apocalypse, this guy would still be bossing me around, being deadweight. That wouldn't be good. They would never imagine that my hoarding habit could actually save my life at a critical moment. I looked at the raft in the system. To survive the storm, This little raft is far from enough. I need more supplies. Having made up my mind, I immediately contacted the agent Xiao Wu to sell the house. When he heard it was a quick sale, the agent on the phone hemmed and hawed, looking very reluctant, until I offered a 10% discount, with all the extra going to him. His voice instantly brightened. Ma'am, don't you worry, a rare property in the city center like this, I guarantee it'll sell within 3 days. This house was an investment by my parents years ago. They wanted to leave it to me as a safety net. The purchase price back then was less than 30% of the current market value. Who would have thought this area would become such a hot spot? Looking at the busy traffic outside, I suddenly remembered that on the 3rd day of the storm in my past life, someone had broken into my house to fight for this house. This time, I'll use this cage to trade for true freedom. After hanging up on the agent, I immediately applied for 5 credit cards. Since my spending habits had been good, I got a decent credit limit. I cashed out all of them. Then, my eyes fell on the TV stand. It was piled high with the gifts I had given to Pan Chi. A limited edition Switch, a PS5, out-of-print figurines. I chuckled to myself sarcastically. Turns out I had unknowingly stockpiled so much hard currency. I listed all these items for sale on second-hand platforms. The notification sounds rang non-stop. After some funds came in, I decisively began a massive shopping spree. This was my favorite part in the post-apocalyptic novels I'd read. I went to major supermarkets and bought all kinds of basic ingredients like rice, flour, oil, various instant foods, canned goods, bottled water, drinks, snacks, and other non-perishables. I bought them all. To avoid suspicion, I bought a fully enclosed cargo truck. After each shopping trip, I would have the workers help me load the stuff onto the truck. Then I'd drive the truck myself to the underground parking lot of my complex. Then I'd store everything in the system's warehouse. Looking at the neatly arranged supplies in the warehouse column, my sense of security was maxed out. After I put the last pack of Coke into the warehouse, the system beeped. Congratulations, player! You've earned 30 experience points. Boat system. From basic raft upgraded to a canoe. The raft in the center of the screen suddenly glowed and transformed into a canoe. I felt a surge of joy. One step closer to a cruise ship, but I had already stored so much food in the warehouse. Why was the experience gain slowing down? Staring at the supplies, I fell into thought. That night, I tossed and turned in bed. My gaze suddenly landed on a plush teddy bear sitting to the side. It had been with me since I was a kid. Whenever I couldn't sleep, I would hug it. Strangely enough, as soon as I hugged it, I would quickly fall asleep. You can't be washed away by the storm, I murmured to myself while pulling the bear into my arms. Thinking of that, I had a brainwave. I opened the system panel and put the bear inside. Immediately, the system beeped. New category of supplies unlocked. Experience increased by 5 points. 5 points. I had put a whole truckload of food in and only got 30 points. If this raft upgrades all the way, could it store living things? Thinking about it, my heart raced. Made up my mind. Once the raft upgrades to a cruise ship, I'll go buy some cats and dogs. Then they'll keep me company on the cruise. Discovering different types of supplies and boosting my experience points, I became even more motivated. This time I don't have to be like a workhorse, pulling cart after cart of food just to get a tiny bit of experience. The next day, I was lying in bed, on a shopping app, picking as many different types of supplies as possible, when my phone started vibrating. It was the agent, Xiao Wu. I quickly answered. Manager Wu, is there news about the house? Because since I woke up, I hadn't spoken a word, so my voice was a bit hoarse. Miss Lin, good news. The listing's only been up a few days, and we already have a potential buyer. He just came by the office and chatted, and said he's willing to match your asking price, pay in full. Xiao Wu's voice was full of disbelief. He also said he's an old friend of yours, heard you're in a hurry to sell, and came specifically to help. Old friend? My mind raced. Not many people know about this house, and those with a motive to buy are even fewer. So there's only one answer. Twirling my hair around my finger, is that person named Pan Chi? Oh, you guessed it exactly right. Xiao Wu's voice was overly excited, almost dramatic. That's him. Looks like you two really are good friends. I let out a light laugh on speakerphone. Our relationship is indeed unusual. Tell him this. If he can come this afternoon with full payment for a viewing, I'll lower the price by another 3%. Hearing how generous I was, the agent got even more excited, thanked me profusely and hung up. They, along with a group, arrived even faster than expected. In less than 2 hours, my doorbell rang urgently. The moment I opened the door, I saw Bai Yi, almost her entire body, hanging on Pan Chi's arm. Her new diamond nails dazzled under the hallway lights. After I broke up with Pan Chi, she completely dropped her hypocritical mask. Her malice toward me was impossible to hide. The paint is peeling. Bai Yi, with the tip of her shoe, kicked the baseboard at the entrance. Chi, look at this mold. Why don't we knock off another $50,000? Pan Chi, with a faint thoughtful air, caressed my doorframe. I said it, this old house is no good, needs a full renovation. Some people just don't get it. Rather waste money on junk than spend it on the house. Now guess there's no need to renovate, since she'll be gone soon anyway. Bai Yi shot me a glance. Never thought the breakup would hit you so hard, selling the house in such a hurry. You want to leave this place of heartbreak, right? Pan Chi's eyes showed a hint of sarcasm. Little did they know, in my eyes, they were the real fools. I don't want to deal with them at all. I just want to sell the house quickly, get cash to stock up on supplies. They strut around Bai Yi like they own the place, pointing with her long nails, picking flaws with this house, trying to make me lower the price. But no matter how well they pretend, they can't hide that joy. It slips out, of course, in such a prime location. To get this house at such a low price, anyone would think they got a great deal. I lean against the door frame with my arms crossed, watching their lousy act. Bai Yi's diamond nail art scrapes across the wall as she snickers. The walls of this dump are practically moldy. Only you would treasure it. I speak calmly. Be careful. If you damage the imported wall paneling, you'll pay for it. He pulls his hand back as if burned, then tries to act composed. Who are you trying to scare? This old house has custom Italian panels from 2010. Back then it was 8,100 per square meter. I cut him off, looking at Pan Chi with a smirk. Want to see the purchase contract? Oh, right. You were there too. Pan Chi's face immediately darkened. Of course she remembers that year she insisted on buying a pair of limited edition sneakers. I said no, so he angrily maxed out my supplementary card. Later, to apologize, he accompanied me to choose this wall paneling. Bai Yi mutters indignantly. It's just a lousy wall. So petty. Next to her, Pan Chi quietly nudges her with his elbow and scolds her in a low voice. Stop it. He awkwardly changes the subject. Lin Wuyuan, I know you've been buying a bunch of food lately. What are you up to? Aren't you afraid? He drags out his tone of attracting mice into the house. I'm startled inside, but keep a straight face. How do you know what I bought? Siege's supplementary card shows all your spending. Bai Yi waves her phone triumphantly. Just yesterday, you made over 100 purchases. You bought so much stuff. Anyone would think it's the end of the world. Listening to Bai Yi's words, my heart skips a beat. What does he know? Just when I thought that couple had realized the apocalypse was coming, Pan Chi casually put his arm around Bai Yi's waist and said condescendingly, even though we're broken up, seeing you shop like crazy, as your ex, I still feel I should remind you not to waste time on those doomsday posts. You have the nerve to remind me. I let out a light laugh. Let me remind you too. Don't be spending my money on your mistress while checking my bank statements on the sly. Their faces instantly turned pale and red. I felt relieved. It seemed they didn't know the apocalypse was coming. I couldn't be bothered to deal with them anymore. So I took the contract from the agent and said, you've been looking at this house for ages. Are you buying it or not? If you want it, sign. If not, get lost. There are 3 more cash buyers waiting to see it. Before I could finish, Pan Chi snatched the contract from me. I knew he couldn't resist. He'd had his eye on this house for a long time. In my past life, on the second day of the storm, he brought Bai Yi here, forced his way in, claiming it was to protect his girlfriend's property. Pan Chi looked at the contract, his fingers trembling slightly with excitement. Bai Yi, panicked, tugged at his arm. What are you hesitating for? Sign it already. Such a cheap house. If we miss it, it's gone. You heard her say there are others waiting to see it. But Pan Chi looked uneasy. But what? Bai Yi's voice was so urgent she couldn't even maintain her usual tone. Pan Chi quietly pulled her aside, lowering his voice. She wants cash in full, and I don't have enough cash on hand. Sweat was beading on his temples from stress. Why didn't you say so earlier? Bai Yi gave him a playful slap, then pressed. How much are you short? Pan Chi hesitated and mentioned a figure. Bai Yi gasped. That was no small amount. She instinctively touched her bag, her eyes darting nervously between me and Pan Chi. Seeing Bai Yi's hesitation, Pan Chi quickly grabbed her hand. Once we get the house, we can flip it and make $1 million. Then we can buy whatever bags and jewelry you want. That was the final straw. Bai Yi gritted her teeth and pulled a card out of her bag. I have some savings here. Use them for now. The agent, Xiao Wu, stepped in smoothly. You two make a perfect couple. A generous and considerate girlfriend like that is rare. He then efficiently took out the POS machine. Let's get the paperwork started. I watched Bai Yi trembling as she entered her PIN, and suddenly remembered how, after the storm in my past life, she had proudly bragged about that money. It was her mother's wedding gift to her. Her mother, if she knew how her daughter turned out, would never rest in peace. The transaction went surprisingly fast. Xiao Wu really is a well-trained account manager. The document preparation was thorough and efficient. Finally, it was time for the last document. Just as Pan Chi was about to sign, Bai Yi suddenly pressed down on the contract. She turned to me with a fake look of concern. Oh, Wuyuan, you sold the house. Where will you live now? You're not going to end up on the streets, are you? The curve of her lips was almost uncontrollable. Her fingernails lightly tapped the table. I slowly pulled a document out of my bag. You don't need to worry about that. I just rented the house to my parents last week. For a year. The house my parents rented for me. There's no problem with me living there. is there? Hearing this, the faces of the two opposite darkened immediately. What? Bai Yi's voice went up an octave. She jumped up from her chair. How can you do this? The house is sold, and you still want to stay here. Once this contract is signed, this house will be mine. I'll kick you out. You'll have to get out, Pan Chi said ferociously. Bai Yi then turned to look at Xiao Wu. Manager Wu, you're a professional. Come and judge, agent. Xiao Wu could only force a smile. Legally speaking, you really can't kick Miss Lin out. How is that possible? The whole house is mine now. Isn't it whatever I say goes? Han Chi glared at Xiao Wu, scaring him into a cold sweat. You've studied for so many years. You should know the principle that a sale does not break a lease. I spoke slowly and deliberately. Then I searched for the relevant regulations and placed them in front of them. The two carefully checked several times. After discovering that such a regulation indeed existed, their momentum instantly deflated. Seeing their instantly frozen expressions, I smiled slightly. So before the lease contract expires, I can continue to live here. Han Chi slammed down his pen. Ink splattered on the contract. So you were setting me up all along. At most 3 months. I held up 3 fingers, looking at the 090 displayed on the system panel in front of me. Of course, I'll pay rent. When I stated the rental amount, I saw Bai Yi's eyes clearly light up. The two exchanged a glance. I heard Bai Yi whisper to Pan Chi, Ji. Anyway, my rented place hasn't expired yet. We're not in a hurry to move either. Why not rent it to her and earn some rent? Han Chi deliberately coughed, trying to sound tough. But she lives here. I can transfer the rent to you right now. I interrupted him, letting the words hang in the air for a moment. And on top of that, add 10% more. Instantly, their eyes lit up as they looked at me. Bai Yi immediately grabbed Pan Chi's sleeve, her voice coquettish. Anyway, we'll be staying here for a long time, so 3 months is nothing. With that, she lifted her chin at me. But it needs to be in the supplementary agreement. You must move out after 3 months. Of course, I agreed without hesitation. I nodded at Xiao Wu, who was standing nearby. He quickly began drafting the supplementary terms. After showing the electronic version to the 3 of us, he trotted out to print it. I watched the 2 of them beaming across from me, sneering inwardly. In 3 months, the torrential rain will have already arrived, and this place will be a vast ocean. I won't need them to kick me out. I'll leave on my own. Xiao Wu soon returned with the new contract. After both parties signed, Pan Chi let out a long sigh of relief. He loosened his tie. Bai Yi, on the other hand, clutched the almost depleted bank card tightly, forcing a smile. We finally have our own house. Then she gave me a sidelong glance. Someone better remember to pay rent. Of course, I decisively picked up my phone and transferred 3 months rent plus deposit, all at once to Pan Chi's account. Hearing the notification of the transfer, both of their grins stretched ear to ear. They left arm in arm with beaming faces, and before stepping out, deliberately kissed in front of me. The old me would have been heartbroken by this scene, but now I just find their act hilarious. After seeing them off, the agent Xiao Wu, with the signed contract, left content and satisfied, and before leaving, he deliberately winked at me. It was as if he was saying, "Ma'am, you played that beautifully." The moment the door clicked shut, the air fell silent. I was the only one left in the room. They don't know that my parents actually died long ago. I told them my parents rented it for me, just to fool them. I slowly walked to the center of the living room, looking around at the space filled with memories of my past and present life. The afternoon sun filtered through the gauze curtains, casting dappled shadows on the dusty floor. Subconsciously, I touched the faint scratch on the wall, the mark Bai Yi had just made with her nail. How ridiculous. I let out a sneer. I pulled up the banking app on my phone, and when I saw the reassuring numbers on the screen, my tense mouth finally relaxed. My fingertip gently swiped across the screen, counting the zeros. A tangible sense of security arose. This money is enough to stockpile more supplies and upgrade my boat system faster. My gaze casually swept over the chandelier's location, where a pinhole camera was hidden, quietly filming at that moment. Cameras like this one, I have a bunch more of them at home. I installed them because I lived alone, lacking a sense of security. Now, they've come in handy for something better. I walked over to the bookshelf, casually adjusting a few books, checking on the hidden cameras. That camera disguised as a book was working fine, pointing straight at the living room couch. Walking into the dining room, my fingertips lightly brushed the linen curtains. That micro camera shaped like a screw was still secure. I remembered after the rainstorm in my past life, Pan Chi and Bai Yi were sitting right under this camera, enjoying the food I had stockpiled, while mocking my stupidity. After checking all the hidden cameras, I stood in the center of the living room and slowly turned around. Good, every angle is perfectly covered. I had originally planned to sell the house and remove these devices, but now that the next buyer is Pan Chi, there's no need to take them down. Maybe after the rainstorm, I can use them to watch Pan Chi and Bai Yi preventing them from causing any more harm. I sat down on the couch and opened the surveillance app on my phone. The screen instantly split into several live feeds, each one clearly recording every corner of this house. Like an invisible net, quietly waiting for prey to arrive. Boom, it's raining. The apocalypse is here. No, it can't be the soon. I quickly glanced at the system. The apocalypse countdown hasn't come yet. There's still time. With a large sum from selling the house, I can stock up on as many supplies as possible. Got to be faster. After thinking, I can't go without fresh vegetables, so I bought a bunch of soil, fertilizer, and tools for planting, and of course, all kinds of vegetable seeds. To be safe, I also bought a lot of frozen vegetables. Basic medicine is also essential. I bought all the medications I normally use, and stocked up on cold medicine, antibiotics, antihistamines, and other basics. In the apocalypse, energy is also a top priority, so I went and bought various generators, fuel purifiers, and a bunch of survival gear. For easy reference, I categorized all the stockpiled supplies. Under each major category, there are more detailed subcategories. There's only 2 months left before the rainstorm. Instead of cooling down, the weather is abnormally heating up, even reaching a terrifying 40 degrees Celsius. For weeks, not a single cloud in the sky. The scorching sun baked the earth. Even the asphalt shimmered with heat haze. People in summer clothes complained in air-conditioned rooms. This weather is crazy, almost fall and still this hot. Global warming is getting worse and worse. I stood by the mall's air-conditioned floor-to-ceiling window, watching the blinding white street outside. Pedestrians hurried by, shielding their eyes from the sun. No one knew this heat was the prelude to an apocalyptic storm. Only the countdown on my system panel reminded me of the impending disaster. "Ma'am, do you want all these bagged up?" The sales clerk's voice pulled me back to reality. I looked away from the window, toward the pile of supplies on the counter. Waterproof matches, high-strength nylon rope, multi-tool, pack them all. I handed over my credit card, but my eyes were fixed on the system panel in my mind. Large multi-masted sailboat upgrade progress, 47%. Next level, paddle steamer not enough, nowhere near enough. Over the next month, I was like a tireless hummingbird, buzzing through every corner of the city. Today's target, medical supplies. The medicine I bought before after much thought, I still think it's way too little. When the apocalypse comes, anything can happen. I need to stock up on more equipment and medicine, just in case. I walked slowly into a medical supply store. It was the biggest one in town. Thermometers, blood pressure monitors, various common medications. I carefully checked the list, crossing off items in my memo. The clerk looked like he wanted to say something. I didn't bother to explain. I just smiled at him. Once I was back in the car, I stashed all the supplies into the system. Supplies stored successfully. Gained 68 experience points. The system prompt chimed. I'd already gotten the bonus experience for medical supplies. Yes, no extra this time. A few days later, I started hitting outdoor gear stores. Rafts, wetsuits, fishing gear. When I pointed at the top of the line diving equipment in the display case, the store manager came up to me personally. "Great eye, ma'am. This set works at 50 meters underwater. Pack it up." I swiped my card without hesitation, watched the clerk carefully box the gear. This equipment would be priceless in the later stages of the flood. Back home, I opened the system panel. The sailboat slowly rotated on the virtual interface. No, still not enough. I stroked my chin, my eyes scanning the system warehouse list that seemed to have no storage limit. What other categories haven't I tried? I fell into thought. When I looked at the window, my eyes lit up. I saw sunlight streaming through the guest room window. It cast a warm golden glow on the windowsill. And on the windowsill, there was a small tomato seedling I had planted before. Over the past 2 months, aside from going on a shopping spree, I've spent all my free time learning to grow plants. From the beginning, when I couldn't even keep a succulent alive, to now, the windowsill is full of various vegetable seedlings. Lettuce, baby cucumbers, cherry tomatoes, radishes, each one is thriving. Every morning, I carefully check the growth of each seedling. I gently pick up one. Its leaves have already unfurled, and tiny flower buds are even appearing on the tender green stem. Why not try this? I pulled up the system interface and tried to store that potted tomato plant, clay pot and all, into the system. The next second, the weight in my hand suddenly disappeared, and the system notification sounded cheerfully. "Congratulations. New category unlocked. Living plants. Experience points increased by 50. My eyes widened in surprise. I quickly stored the other potted plants into the system as well. Each time I added a pot, the XP jumped. When the last pot of lettuce disappeared from the windowsill, my system interface suddenly burst into dazzling golden light. That sailboat transformed and expanded in the light, finally turning into a majestic steamship. Copper pipes gleamed with metallic luster, and the black hull had exquisite embossed decorations. I was fascinated, admiring the new ship. Compared to the previous sailboat, the steamship was noticeably larger. On the deck, I could even see a small greenhouse dome. It seems the system automatically arranged a planting area for my plants. Great, but I wonder what happens to plants stored in the system's warehouse. The next morning, I retrieved a potted tomato plant from the warehouse. I carefully examined its condition. To my delight, under the system's preservation, It seemed to have entered a dormant state. The leaves were still green and plump, with no sign of wilting. It looks like I can grow more different crops in the future. Fruits, spices, medicinal plants. Besides plants, I also raised various chickens, ducks, fish, sheep, and so on in it. I also have a kitten and a puppy. But unfortunately, no matter how many of these I place, just like plants, the XP only increases by a little. Watching the warehouse stockpile grow day by day, my sense of security gradually increases. The apocalypse is coming. Half a month left on the countdown. The whole city is still unbearably hot, but I can already faintly smell an unusual dampness in the air. My shopping list is getting shorter, replaced by a hand-drawn rare item hunting map. The map marks various obscure flea markets in the city, handicraft workshops, even recycling stations. I feel like I've already bought every conceivable category, but the XP is still increasing more slowly. Just when I was at a loss, a turning point soon came. I crouch in front of a street stall. My fingers lightly brush over a strangely shaped bronze artifact. How much is this? The vendor is an old man with a long beard. He squints at me. You know your stuff, young lady. This is a distiller from an old ship. It can extract fresh water. I suppress my excitement. I pay without a change in expression. When this heavy copper item is stored into the system, the notification sound is especially pleasant. Item stored successfully. Experience points increased by 30. So over these past few days, I've been constantly hunting for goods in various markets, continuously adding experience to the ship system. The countdown to the storm has 1 day left. Night falls. I collapse onto the sofa, exhausted, staring at the system's experience bar that's almost full. I space out. I'm so tired. Good thing I bought an expensive enough sofa back then. Lying on it is so comfortable. I mutter to myself. Sofa. Oh, right. I haven't put any furniture into the system yet. I jump up from the sofa excitedly. Quickly, I store the sofa beneath me into the system. Materials stored successfully. Gained 20 experience points. That's a decent amount. Tomorrow, as soon as the furniture store opens, I'll go grab everything. I'll definitely fill up the experience bar. Countdown to the storm. 0 days. The countdown on the system panel switched from days to hours. I got up early. I headed straight to the furniture store. After a day of raiding, I bought every type of furniture there was. When the workers loaded the last chair into my truck, I let out a long sigh of relief. Now I just need to drive the truck home and store all these things. Hey, isn't that Lin Wuyuan? What's up? Found a new place. I was about to drive off when I heard a familiar voice behind me. It's Bai Yi. She's snuggling up to Pan Chi. He looks at me with contempt. Look at you. After leaving me, you're all disheveled. After a day of running around, I am indeed a bit tired. But now, being belittled by them like this, I don't feel sad at all. After all, the countdown on the system panel is ticking away quickly. I don't have time to chat with them now. There's less than half an hour until the storm hits. My ship system hasn't reached max level yet. I have to race against time to store the materials. But they don't seem to want to let me go easily. Stop right there. Don't leave. Pan Chi said loudly. If I remember correctly, 3 months are up. You should vacate my house. I'm moving out today. You can move in now. Anyway, I've already put everything I need into the system warehouse. There's nothing left in that house worth keeping. The two were surprised by my blunt attitude. For a moment, they couldn't find words to reply. I was starting to get anxious. If there's nothing else, I'll be going. I have things to do. You can't leave. Who knows if you've left the house a mess. You have to come with us to inspect it. Bai Yi held on to me tightly. I was sweating with anxiety. There's no way I can drive home within half an hour. But seeing these two difficult people in front of me, I also knew that if I refused, they would never let me go easily. Fine, but I'll go separately from you, I replied. Bai Yi wanted to say something more, but Pan Chi stopped her. Looks like these two were planning to hitch a ride with me. After watching them take a cab away, I quickly rushed into the truck's cargo box. Only a dozen minutes left. There's no time to drive to a secluded place anymore. I quickly stored the furniture piece by piece. The system beep kept ringing in my ears. As soon as the last nightstand was stored, a dazzling golden light appeared before my eyes. Items stored successfully. Experience points increased by 20. Ship system upgraded. Congratulations, player. You have obtained a Noah's Ark class luxury cruise ship. Hearing the system prompt, my heart started pounding. Finally, I finally made it. I danced happily in the truck's cargo box. On the system interface before me, a huge cruise ship slowly rotated. Its streamlined hull had a pearlescent sheen. The deck was dotted with greenhouse domes, solar panel arrays, and even a small wind turbine. Outside, raindrops finally began to tap on the truck roof, making crisp sounds. The system let out a harsh beep. Then came a cold series of beeps. Countdown ended. The apocalyptic rain is here. With a rumble, an enormous bolt of lightning struck from the sky, illuminating the entire city. The end of the world has come. Raindrops begin to patter lightly against the roof of the truck, making a tapping sound. Pedestrians scramble to find shelter from the rain. I grip the steering wheel tight, take a deep breath, and step on the gas without hesitation. The truck barrels through the thickening rain. The wipers swipe at full speed, still can barely make out the road ahead. Through the blurry windshield, I see a couple by the roadside, awkwardly shielding their heads with bags. Their shirts are soaked through. Good thing I made it just in time. Got my hands on the cruise ship, I muttered to myself. My fingers tap the steering wheel absent-mindedly. The rain is getting heavier by the second. The scattered drops have turned into streaks, leaving trails across the window. The system interface hovers right in front of me. That massive image of the cruise ship gives me a sliver of reassurance. But I know if I don't release it in the right spot before the water gets too deep, even the most advanced ship will just become scrap. The port. I have to get to the port. I repeat to myself. I turn onto the highway leading to the port. In the downpour, other cars call with their hazards on. Only my truck keeps up a normal pace. A flash of lightning tears across the sky, followed by a rumble of thunder. The storm finally breaks in full force. Rain pours down like a waterfall. Visibility drops to under 30 feet. I have to slow down. Eyes glued to the road ahead. I turn on the radio. It's broadcasting reports about the heavy rain. The city is hit by a torrential downpour, expected to last 4 to 5 hours. Residents are advised to stay safe and avoid unnecessary travel. I laugh 4 or 5 hours. The truth is, this rain will last for 3 whole years. Water is already pooling in low-lying areas. Tires kick up huge splashes as they roll through. I check the system time. It's been less than 20 minutes since the rain started. The roads are already flooded. I need to hurry. I bite my lower lip and carefully accelerate. As I pass through an intersection, I see a few traffic cops directing traffic in the rain. The water is already over their ankles, but they keep at it. A pang of bitterness hits me. They don't know this rain will never stop. The closer I get to the port, the worse the road gets. Some sections are already shin-deep. A few cars risk driving through the water. Many more choose to detour or just stop. Good thing I'm in a truck with high clearance. The engine won't stall from water intake. My phone buzzes non-stop on the passenger seat. The name Panchi flashes stubbornly on the screen. I hold the wheel with one hand, fumble with the other for the Bluetooth earpiece and answer. Lin Wuyuan. Panchi's voice exploded in my ear, almost drowning out the truck's engine and the rain. We're at the house now. Where are you? Weren't you supposed to wait for our inspection? I carefully avoided a deep puddle ahead and tried to keep my voice steady. Something urgent came up. I had to go. You, on the other end of the line. I heard his exasperated breathing, then by Yiyi's murmuring in the background. You know what we found? Panchi started nitpicking. The living room floor has dents from your furniture. The sliding balcony door is stuck too. And name your price. I'll pay for it. I cut him off impatiently, while jacking the steering wheel to avoid a floating trash can. There was a brief silence on the phone. I could almost picture the greed in their eyes when they looked at each other. The truck entered the port area. The rain got even heavier. Dense raindrops hammered the roof with a deafening roar. After a moment, Panchi blurted out an outrageous number. I couldn't help but laugh. The port gate was right ahead. The guard was struggling to close the gate. Is that so? I muted my phone, honked the horn, and rolled down the window. I shouted to the guard, scheduled cargo supplier. Then I unmuted and continued. Then I need to confirm the damage. The guard hesitated and opened the gate. I drove into the port area. There was some rustling on the phone, and voices talking. Please mark exactly what's different from 3 months ago. I said, parking at the deepest there. I'll pay full compensation. An awkward silence fell on the other end. Only the rain and muffled arguments. I turned off the engine. Through the rain-streaked window, I looked out at the choppy sea. Well, this. Panchi's voice was noticeably weaker. That sliding balcony door is obviously what? I unbuckled and got ready to step out. The video showed clearly that door was already broken 2 years ago. And you said you'd replace it with a new one. Don't remember. The line went dead silent. I let out a cold laugh. Without another word, I threw my phone out of the car. I pushed the door open. The rain instantly soaked me through. I looked up and raised my arms. The dense raindrops fell on me, as if welcoming my rebirth. If he had just been more restrained, maybe I would have thrown him a little compensation. Now he won't get a single cent. In the pouring rain, the harbour water had started to rise. Waves were crashing against the dock. I stared at the turbulent sea, took a deep breath, and opened the system interface. The system released a cruise ship at the target location. In an instant, a dazzling golden light pierced through the rain. A massive cruise ship materialized at the berth, gently swaying with the waves. It was even more magnificent than what I saw on the system interface. Its streamlined hull still glistened with a pearlescent sheen even in the storm. I quickly climbed the gangway. When my feet hit the deck, an unprecedented sense of safety washed over me. I turned around and looked. The city beyond the harbour was already shrouded in a grey curtain of rain. Streets had turned into rivers, and cars floated like toys in the water. Pushing open the heavy cabin door, I was instantly struck by the sight before me. So stunned I forgot to breathe. A grand lobby with a ceiling nearly 10 meters high came into view. A crystal chandelier hung from the dome, its thousands of Swarovski crystals sparkling under the lights. The marble floor was so polished it gleamed, reflecting the golden columns on either side. A faint fragrance lingered in the air. My shoes were completely soaked, so I just took them off and tossed them aside. When my bare feet stepped onto the soft Persian rug, I felt like I was walking on clouds. To my left was an open curved staircase. To my right, the whole wall was floor-to-ceiling glass, Outside, the rain was pouring down, which only made the warm, cozy interior feel cozier. My soaked clothes clung to my body, and I was shivering from the cold. I quickly followed the system's instructions and hurried to the cabin area. When I pushed open the door to the presidential suite, the moment I did, I was blown away again. This wasn't a cabin at all, it was like a top-tier luxury home. The living room was spacious enough to host a party. The whole wall was bulletproof glass, with the raging sea right outside. In the bedroom, a king-size bed looked impossibly soft. I couldn't wait to rush into the bathroom. With its brass fixtures and black marble, I gasped in awe. The jacuzzi was big enough for 3 people. As the hot water poured over me, I couldn't help but let out a satisfied sigh. Every pore opened up, and the fatigue and cold were completely washed away. After my shower, I wrapped myself in a soft bathrobe and noticed my phone buzzing non-stop on the nightstand. In the original owners group chat, all hell had broken loose. The basement is completely flooded. My collection of Mao-Tai. Anyone have food? Delivery is all shut down. I'm starving. The forecast says it's going to rain for days. What are we going to do? I scrolled through all the complaints, feeling conflicted. They had no idea this rain would never stop. Just then, I heard a meow. My nightgown was being tugged down. I looked down. A snow-white kitten was staring at me with sapphire-like eyes looking at me. I bent down, picked it up, and smiled gently. After a day of running around, I suddenly felt exhaustion hit me. I fell into the big bed with the kitten and let out a satisfied sigh. The velvet mattress was incredibly soft. I almost sank into it instantly, and in my past life back then, I could only sleep on the living room floor listening to the sounds from the master bedroom Pan Chi and Bai Yi's laughter and play with only a thin blanket. How foolish I was, I whispered to myself with a soft laugh, burying my face in the down pillow. The kitten stayed quietly with me. My consciousness slowly faded. The last thing I remembered was the never-ending sound of rain outside the window and the cloud-like softness beneath me. When I naturally woke up the next day, for a moment I didn't know where I was. I lay in the middle of the huge bed feeling like a single flea wrapped in a cloud princess. The mattress was soft yet supportive. No matter how I tossed and turned, it was comfortingly relaxing. I stretched lazily, feeling the silky smoothness of the high-thread count Egyptian cotton sheets, those cold floors from my past life, thin blankets, and the laughter from the master bedroom felt like a distant past life. Well, to be precise, it was indeed a past life. I got up and quickly freshened up, took out a silk robe, put it on, then carried the kitten and leisurely walked downstairs, headed to the dining room. Sitting on the dining chair, I transferred some ingredients from the system storage into the double-door refrigerator of the dining room. A variety of ingredients were neatly arranged inside. In the fresh food compartment lay tantalizing Australian Wagyu French foie gras. In the crisper drawer were piled with fresh fruits and vegetables. I hummed a tune and fried myself a sunny-side-up egg with hollandaise sauce and smoked salmon. The toaster dinged, popping up golden crispy toast. The coffee maker was gurgling, brewing a rich espresso. Finally, I took from the fresh food drawer a box of fresh raspberries and carefully arranged them around the edge of the plate. Perfect. I looked at my creation with satisfaction, picked up the plate and walked to the table by the window. The rainstorm outside was still raging, tirelessly pounding the sea, but the cruise ship was as steady as land. I took a sip of coffee, suddenly remembering something. I took out the tablet and opened the monitoring software for the old house. The screen lit up. Pan Chi and Bai Yi were sitting at the dining table eating. At that moment, they had no idea at all that the apocalypse had already arrived. Right now they're using the one I carefully selected, the Italian marble table, with 2 exquisite sashimi platters on it. Pan Chi swirls a glass of red wine, his smugness practically easing off the screen. Look at those people in the owner's group. Bai Yi picks up a slice of thick-cut salmon with chopsticks, a sarcastic smile on her lips. It's just a little rain. They got scared and bought a bunch of instant noodles and hot pots. What a pathetic sight. Pan Chi nods in agreement and takes a sip of red wine. Exactly. This rain will stop in a week at most. Why not be like us? Buy some premium ingredients and enjoy life. He swirls his glass smugly. This is my prized burgundy. Perfect to drink now. I cut a piece of tender sunny-side egg, watch the yolk slowly flow out, and can't help but chuckle. In the surveillance footage, the two are toasting, completely unaware that their premium ingredients won't even last a week. Enjoy. I raise my coffee cup to the screen. After the power goes out, let's see how your deep-sea salmon and premium steak will last. In the screen, Bai Yi is showing off her new manicure. Pan Chi is busy refilling their glasses. Outside the window behind them, the rain has already submerged the garden sculpture downstairs. The water level is quietly rising. I turn off the surveillance and leisurely finish the last bite of breakfast. Every item on the plate maintains its perfect texture. The smart climate system on the yacht keeps everything perfect. Day 5 of the storm. The sky looks like it's been torn open, rain pouring down tirelessly. I stand in the spacious, bright kitchen of the yacht, various utensils on the island, the soft light shining down from above. The yacht's power system runs smoothly, converting the storm's energy into warm electricity. The Australian Wagyu steak in the pan is sizzling, the aroma of rosemary and garlic mingling in the air. I flip it skillfully, watching the surface turn a perfect caramel color. In the steamer next to it, lobster tails slowly turn red, emitting a fresh ocean aroma. On a day like this, you really need an iced drink, I mutter to myself. Open the double-door fridge, take out the pre-chilled mango and coconut water. The blender hums softly. Soon, a golden, tempting mango smoothie is ready. The glass is beaded with fine drops of water. I deliberately add a paper umbrella and straw, enjoying this little ritual in the apocalypse. Suddenly remembering something, I carry the plate to the control panel, pull up the old house's surveillance feed. The moment the screen lights up, I can't help but chuckle. In the picture, Pan Chi is staring at the open fridge, sighing deeply. The fridge, once packed with premium ingredients, is now a mess. Thawing blood water from the spoiled steak and salmon leaks out, making a complete mess of the fridge. He grabs a box of now grey Wagyu and throws it into the trash with a heavy heart. I told you, we should have bought some canned food and self-heating pots. He glares at Bai Yi reproachfully. Now look, all these premium goods are ruined. Bai Yi is in front of the mirrored cabinet, fixing her hair. Upon hearing this, she immediately fires back. Who was it that said they love fine living, and looked down on Lin Wuyuan for being all about practicality? She mimics Pan Chi's tone. Buying cheap stuff is so tacky. We need to live with class. Wasn't that you who said that? Pan Chi is left speechless, his lips twitching, before mumbling under his breath. At least the convenience food she hoarded wouldn't go bad after 2 days without refrigeration. If she were here, at least we wouldn't be starving right now. He says it very softly, but Bai Yi clearly hears him. She spins around sharply, her eyes wide. Her fresh manicure digs deep into her palm. Pan Chi, how dare you say that? I cut a perfect piece of steak, the meat tender and juicy. On the monitor, the two are already in a heated argument. Pan Chi looks at the empty kitchen, his eyes unable to hide his regret. Bai Yi, on the other hand, is red with anger. She slams the last half bottle of water hard onto the table. The rainstorm has contaminated the water supply, and the water from their tap now is all murky. On my cruise ship, the water filtration system runs steadily in the lower deck, delivering purified water to every faucet. I gently swish the iced drink in my hand, the little paper umbrella inside swirling softly with the motion. The rainstorm outside still rages, but inside the cruise ship, everything is comfortable and secure. Looks like. I take a sip of the iced drink. Fine living also needs electricity. On the 10th day of the storm, I slowly rise from the heated pool. Water droplets roll down my skin. The pool temperature is precisely controlled at 28 degrees, a stark contrast to the raging storm outside. I wrap myself in a soft bathrobe and casually pick up the tablet on the console. I swipe my finger lightly, and as the monitor lights up, 2 figures come into view. In the picture, Pan Chi and Bai Yi are now so gaunt their cheekbones protrude, like 2 starving rats, frantically ransacking the house. Pan Chi's once meticulously styled hair is now greasy and plastered to his forehead. Bai Yi's designer loungewear is wrinkled and stained. Suddenly, Pan Chi seems to spot something, and dashes frantically into the storage room. When he reappeared, he was holding a pack of crushed braised beef noodles. His expression was like he'd found a priceless treasure. It was my backup stash from last year, I murmured to myself. Can't believe he actually found it. The most ironic part is, Pan Chi used to despise this cheap junk food the most. Now he's trembling as he tears open the package. He doesn't even have time to mix the seasoning packet evenly, and he's already eagerly biting into the dry, hard noodle block. Crumbs cover the corners of his mouth. He's eating so fast he even chokes and pounds his chest. Bai Yi watches longingly, swallows and asks, "Can you spare me some?" Pan Chi protectively turns the noodle block away. Mumbling indistinctly, he says, "I'll look again. Maybe there's more." I casually pick up the champagne from the ice bucket nearby. Golden bubbles rise gently in the glass. Just as I take a sip, my brow furrows. Pan Chi on the monitor at this moment has already finished the instant noodles completely. He stares at the wrapper, muttering to himself. "Right, Lin Wuyuan." Bai Yi immediately leans in, her eyes sparkling. "Right, that hoarder ex-girlfriend of yours, she must have food there." They exchange a glance, a sly smile creeping onto their lips. That greedy look in their eyes I know all too well. Just like in my past life. The expression they had when they seized my supplies. Exactly the same. Pan Chi even licks the seasoning powder off his lips, as if already fantasizing about the sight of himself taking over my supplies. I gently swirl the champagne glass. Fine bubbles rise steadily. The storm outside keeps pounding tirelessly against the porthole, and those two on the monitor have started rummaging through their phones, clearly figuring out how to contact me. They just can't let it go. I sigh softly, take a sip of champagne. I lightly swirl the champagne glass, watching on the monitor the famished look of those two. A cold smile curls on my lips. Thinking of me now is way too late. The rain has lasted for 10 days. The whole city has long turned into an ocean. Our neighborhood is low-lying. The flood has already reached the 3rd floor. Even if they know I'm at the port, they can never cross this deadly water. However, the next morning, while I was enjoying freshly squeezed orange juice, the movement on the monitor surprised me a bit. Pan Kizeng drags several plastic storage bins into the living room. Bai Yiyu, meanwhile, frantically ransacks the place. The dark circles under their eyes show they haven't slept all night, but in their eyes a desperate hope burns. This'll work. Pan Kizeng excitedly holds up several pieces of wardrobe shelf boards. Bai Yiyu grits her teeth, suddenly rushes into the bedroom, and brings out a pile of her most precious designer dresses. I recognize at a glance that designer dress. In her past life, she proudly told me that Pan Kizeng used my supplementary card to buy it for her. To my surprise, she actually picks up scissors without hesitation, and cuts those expensive fabrics into strips. Her slender fingers turn white from the strain, but her eyes are filled only with insane obsession. This needs to be tied tighter. Pan Kizeng, sweating profusely, directs, using those designer fabrics to wrap the boards and plastic bins together. After hours of struggle, a shabby raft actually takes shape. It looks as if it could fall apart at any moment. They laboriously move the raft downstairs. They place it on the water. Though it's shabby, it actually manages to float. Pan Kizeng carefully climbs onto it first. The raft sways violently. Bai Yiyi screams in fear. Hurry! In the end, both of them tremblingly get in simply well. Pan Kizeng uses a board as a paddle. Clumsily, he rows through floodwater littered with all kinds of debris. I put down my orange juice and watch the monitor with interest. The areas the raft passes through are covered with disgusting floating things, rotten food, animal carcasses, and various insects. Bai Yi grabs the edge of the raft tightly, her knuckles white from the grip. Every sway makes her suppress a scream. Pan Kizeng paddles desperately, staring intently ahead. That insane obsession reminds me of their expressions in the past life when they snatched my last piece of bread. Yet I'm not worried. For starters, they don't know where I am now. Even if they did, it would take days to paddle here. On the 11th day of the relentless storm, inside the cruise ship, it still maintains a constant temperature and humidity for comfort. I'm on the top observation deck, enjoying sunbathing. Of course, it's artificial sunlight, but it's enough to lift the spirits. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shatters the peace. The system interface suddenly flashed red. A mechanical alert sounded in my ear. Warning, human life form detected approaching. Distance, 200 meters. Approaching steadily. I raised an eyebrow and stood up. Quickly walked to the control room. The HD surveillance footage lit up. That dilapidated raft was struggling through the waves. Han Chi and Bai Yi were soaked through, their lips purple from cold, but they still paddled desperately. They actually found me. I snorted lightly. Seems Han Chi is more cunning than I thought. Probably on my truck or in my phone. He planted a trucker. They were obviously stunned by the huge cruise ship before them. Bai Yi's mouth dropped open. She even forgot to paddle. Han Chi, on the other hand, had a greedy gleam in his eyes, like a starving wolf seeing a piece of fat meat. Open the door. Lin Wuyuan, we know you're in there. Han Chi, using all his strength, pounded on the cruise ship's custom alloy door. His palms were red from the effort. I leisurely brought up the external communication system. Their faces suddenly appeared on the display beside the hatch. The two were taken aback at first, then showed ecstatic expressions. Wu Yuan, great, you're alive. We barely managed to find this place. Let us in, quick. Yeah, for the sake of our past bond, please help us. This damn weather is terrible. I smiled slightly, turned around and picked up from the table a freshly made pan-seared foie gras. The golden crispy surface was still steaming. With black truffle sauce, the aroma seemed to penetrate the screen. They stopped talking abruptly. I slowly cut off a piece, deliberately clinking the knife and fork to make a crisp sound. As the foie gras melted in my mouth, I squinted contentedly. Through the screen, I could clearly see their throats bobbing as they swallowed saliva wildly. Yu Pan Chi finally realized I was messing with them. His face turned blue with rage. Lin Wuyuan, what do you mean? Bai Yiyu, however, was still putting on a show. Tears came on cue. Wuyuan, we really know we were wrong. Have some pity on us. I put down the knife and fork, picked up the wine beside me and took a sip. Then I spoke slowly. Don't you two forget who said that hoarding supplies is low class. They were momentarily speechless. I continued enjoying the meal, savoring every bite carefully. As they watched me finish the last piece of foie gras, Pan Chi finally exploded. JR, open the door for me. He kicked the alloy door crazily. It is instead pushed back by the reaction force, stumbling backward. Bai Yi also dropped the pretense and screamed curses. You'll die a horrible death. When we get in, you're in for it. I chuckle softly, turn off the external comms. Their shouts and curses are completely shut out. They can only rage impotently, pounding on the indestructible alloy door. The alarm system shows they're still futilely trying every method, but I'm already getting ready to enjoy a nice hot bath. When I wake up, the rain outside hasn't let up. It keeps pounding relentlessly against the porthole. I languidly sit up, stretch, and while brushing my teeth, I turn on the monitor. The entrance is empty. Only murky floodwater gently laps against the hull. They finally gave up. I chuckle softly, and head to the kitchen in a good mood. The popcorn machine is humming, golden kernels popping and crackling. I grab a can of ice-cold cola from the fridge, pour it into my special cola glass, and toss in a slice of lemon. Bubbles happily rise in the glass. I take a sip, and the icy jolt sends a shiver through me. Then I sigh contentedly. Armed with snacks, I step into the home theater. I sink into the soft leather sofa and start browsing the movie library. But just as the movie reaches a crucial scene, the piercing alarm shatters the peace again. Not again. I frown impatiently and stride quickly to the control room. The surveillance feed freezes me for a moment. Ahead of the cruise ship, a dozen or so people are gathered, standing on a few crude rafts. Pan Chi and Bai Yi stand at the front. Behind them a group of gaunt survivors. Look, Pan Chi shouts hoarsely, pointing at the cruise ship. There's food, drinks, and electricity in there. She's just one person, but she's hogging all these resources. The crowd stirs restlessly. A woman shouts, "Please, open the door. My kid hasn't eaten in 2 days." The boy in her arms looks about 10 years old. Bai Yi steps forward at just the right moment, putting on a pitiful act. "It's all my fault. Maybe because I've always been better than Lin Wuyuan since we were kids. She harbors a grudge against me." She wipes non-existent tears. If I'd realized earlier how jealous she was, maybe things wouldn't have come to this. This immediately fuels the crowd's anger. A burly man waves his fist and roars, "Because of jealousy, she's shutting out so many people. Is she even human, letting us die?" "Exactly. Open the door." The others chime in. "Why should she get to enjoy everything alone?" Pan Chi seizes the chance to fan the flames. "We're starving to death, and she's in there living it up. Someone that's selfish deserves to." Before he can finish, someone suddenly starts slamming an iron bar against the cruise ship's door. Seeing this, the others also grab various tools and madly smash against the hull. I stand in front of the console. Through the high-def camera I coldly watch the frenzied crowd outside. Their shouts and banging on the door, through the thick alloy door panel, faintly reach my ears, like the wails of trapped beasts. Everyone I press the external communication button. My voice calmly comes through the speakers. "If you keep trying to break down the door by force, the cruise security system will activate the self-destruct program." The crowd instantly falls silent. All movement freezes. I continue speaking slowly and calmly. "When that happens, all the supplies in the warehouse will sink to the bottom of the sea. You'll get nothing." A tall, thin man snorts. "Who are you trying to scare? You must be bluffing." "Yeah." Another woman chimes in. "Look at her. There's probably not much stuff in there anyway. She's just putting on a brave face." I smile slightly, turn around and from the nearby dining table, pick up a plate of freshly cooked steak. Australian grass-fed steak with black truffle. The sauce is still steaming. I deliberately move closer to the camera so everyone can see every detail of this delicacy. I give an exaggerated sound of approval, slowly cut off a piece, letting the sauce drip down slowly. The steak is cooked to perfection. The crowd outside instantly becomes dead silent. All you can hear, the sound of swallowing, one after another. Like a magician, I pull out a cup of ice cream, scoop up a spoonful. Can't skip dessert, right? Pan Chi's eyes stares at the food on the screen, his Adam's apple bobbing non-stop. Bai Yi's eyes are red with jealousy, her nails digging deep into her palms. Someone suddenly roars in rage, but is immediately pulled back by a companion. "Don't be impulsive. What if she's telling the truth?" And so, the group is stuck in the pouring rain, caught between a rock and a hard place. The rain soaks them to the bone. Some start sneezing, shivering uncontrollably. Finally, someone can't take it anymore. Let's go. Let's go. Hanging around here isn't going to solve anything." Gradually, the crowd begins to disperse, each paddling their crude rafts, disappearing into the curtain of rain. In the end, only Pan Chi and Bai Yi remain, still not giving up, standing in front of the cruise. They kneel on the platform, before the cruise door, rainwater streaming down their hair. "Wuyuan, we really know we were wrong." Pan Chi's voice is choked with tears, for the sake of what we once had. Bai Yi also cries, tears streaming down her face. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have been jealous of you. I shouldn't have taken Pan Chi away. Can you forgive us, please?" I quietly watched the surveillance footage, 2 people kneeling, remembering in my past life, when they pushed me out of the house, I was also kneeling in the rain like this, begging them not to take the last bit of food. My fingers lightly slide across the console. I cut off external communication. The moment the screen goes dark, I see the look of despair on their faces. The rain is still falling, but my heart will never get wet for them again. 2 mornings later, the alarm blares sharply again. I walk to the console. The scene on the surveillance monitor makes me raise an eyebrow. This time, more people have come. About 20 or 30 of them, crammed onto a few food rafts. It looks quite imposing. Pan Chi stands at the front, looking every bit the leader, pounding heavily on the cruise ship's gate. "Lin Wuyuan, do you see this? If you don't open the door today, we're not leaving." Bai Yi chimes in on the side, her voice shrill. "We're all compatriots. How can you be so cold-hearted?" The crowd suddenly stirs. They start pressuring with a cacophony of voices. "Yeah, a cruise ship this big. What's wrong with sharing a little space? You're hogging all these resources alone. Don't you feel guilty? Open the door. We're not leaving." I find it laughably childish. I simply turn on the external speakers and fire back at them one by one. "Hey, uncle, last time you said your wife and kids are starving, but from what I recall, you're single. And you, ma'am, you said you haven't eaten in 3 days. So the cookies in your hand, where did the wrapper come from? And you, Pan Chi, Didn't you say last time you'd never come back? The ones I called out blush crimson. They stammer, unable to speak. In the midst of this farce, my gaze is suddenly drawn to the back of the crowd. To a girl. She looks no more than 10. Her thin, frail body, wrapped in a raincoat way too big for her. Her face is terribly pale. From start to finish, she stands quietly at the back, not joining in any of the shouting. She doesn't even look up. And you? I ask her directly through the speaker. Don't you have anything to say? The girl seems surprised to be pulled out. She's startled. She timidly looks up at the camera. Her eyes are big, but lackluster. Her voice is as faint as a mosquito's, but it's still picked up by the mic. People said there's food here. That's why I followed. But I don't think it's right to pressure you like this. So I kept quiet. The crowd erupts in uproar. Someone glares at her angrily. My heart softens a little. In an apocalypse like this, to still hold such thoughts is truly rare. I'm over. To the gate. Under the astonished gaze of the crowd, the girl hesitantly paddles her small raft closer. I quickly, on the system interface, find the access permission management. Add her facial information to the whitelist. System, open the entrance for whitelisted personnel. Why does she get to go in? Han Chi is the first to react, hopping mouth. I answer calmly, because she has a normal worldview. A small hatch on the side of the cruise ship slowly opens, just enough for one person to pass through. The girl looks at the open door in disbelief, then looks back at the stunned crowd behind her. Hurry, get in, I urge her. Just as the girl stumbles through the hatch, a few people who don't give up try to rush in after her. However, an invisible energy wall suddenly appears and slams them back, throwing them into the water. Warning, unauthorized personnel are prohibited from entering. The system's mechanical voice rings out coldly. Seeing this scene, the crowd finally gives up completely. Some curse and complain, some hang their heads in disappointment. But in the end, they all paddle their rafts away one by one. The hatch slowly closes, shutting out the storm and the greed. The girl stands in the dry cabin, looking around at everything, at a loss. Welcome to the dawn, I say to her through the intercom. Go take a hot shower first. I've already prepared some clothes for you. Through the monitor, I see the girl's eyes suddenly redden. She whispers, thank you for trusting me. And in this apocalypse, I've finally found the first person worth saving. What's your name? I ask through the intercom. I'm Xiao Xian. The girl answers properly. Okay, then I'll call you Xiaoyan from now on. I sit in front of the monitor, looking at her young and timid face. I've already placed the clean clothes on the table next to you. Go take a hot shower. After hearing my words, Xiaoyan timidly steps forward, picks up the soft, brand new clothes I've prepared for her, like a frightened little animal, guided by my voice. Walking into the guest bathroom, I sit at the control console, a warm cup of coffee at hand. On the split-screen monitor in front of me, one of the screens shows the hallway just outside the bathroom door. Not long after, the sound of water stops. The door is gently pushed open, a crack, and a wet head peeks out. Xiao Yan, barefoot, steps onto the thick carpet in the hallway, each step hesitant and cautious, as if beneath her feet is not carpet but thin ice that could crack any moment, making it especially heartbreaking to watch. She stopped at the entrance of the living room and didn't move forward. Her timid eyes swept over the ceiling soaring nearly 10 meters high, the crystal chandelier hanging down, and finally landed on the mirror-like marble floor, where her small and bewildered figure was reflected. Looking at her lonely and nervous figure, I chuckled softly, got up, and walked into the living room. The expression on her face, a mix of awe and fear, reminded me of myself when I first boarded this ship. In the harsh environment outside, the luxury inside this cruise ship always feels surreal. I walked down the stairs step by step, and saw that Xiao Yan was still standing in the same spot, not moving an inch. It seemed that until I gave her instructions, she didn't dare to move around. Good. It seems my decision to save her was right. Your room is ready, I said, breaking the silence in the living room. She was startled, turned her head sharply to look at me. Her big eyes were still misty from her bath. I nodded at her. Come with me. She froze for a few seconds, then obediently followed me to the guest room. I walked to the guest room door, entered a passcode, and the door opened with a click. All the rooms on this cruise ship have doors that can be locked. I can control their opening and closing through the system. Of course, I can also set a passcode for others to come and go. Your room passcode is 102,548. My room? She looked incredulous. I nodded and walked into the guest room. I specifically chose a more comfortable room with a nice view. Xiao Yan followed me in slowly, looking around curiously, but she still seemed cautious. I let out a chuckle. This is yours from now on. You can do whatever you want. No need to be so tense. Hearing my words, she hesitated and sat down on the edge of the bed, her palms unconsciously pressing down on the white down comforter. The extreme softness seemed to startle her, making her pull her hand back as if shocked, her fingers curling up. Seeing her like this, I felt a pang of sympathy. It seemed that this child's life before the apocalypse was also very hard. Just as we were staring at each other, not knowing what to say, Xiao Yan's stomach suddenly rumbled. Her face flushed bright red, looking embarrassed. She quickly lowered her head and covered her stomach. I smiled. Are you hungry? Let me get you something to eat. The walk from the guest area to the kitchen isn't short. Xiao Yan followed closely behind me the whole way, like she's afraid that if she's not careful, she might get lost. We arrived at the dining room. I told her to pick a table she liked and sit down. I walked into the kitchen myself. I walked over to a row of rice cookers, chose one and opened it, ladled out 2 bowls of steaming chicken congee. Then from the fridge, I took out a few plates of refreshing side dishes. My stomach isn't great, so I used to keep a pot of congee simmering at home, keeping it warm, so if I suddenly got a stomachache, I could still have something warm to eat. Han Chi, because of this habit, disliked me, calling me a hoarder, saying I even had to buy several rice cookers. Now the kitchen on my cruise ship is bigger than his entire house, so I can put as much stuff as I want. I carried the tray out of the kitchen and gently placed it on the clean table. The moment I looked up, I saw Xiao Yan visibly swallow. Her eyes were fixed on the plate, but her hands were twisted together under the table, knuckles white. Eat. I sat down across from her. My voice was calm. You must be starving. She finally picked up the spoon, trembling. When the first bite of congee entered her mouth, her eyes quickly turned red, but she kept her head down, not letting herself cry out loud. I patted her hand reassuringly, then picked up my own spoon and took a sip. She had obviously been through something, but now wasn't the time to ask. The bowl of congee was quickly emptied. She ate it all up, not leaving a single grain of rice. Want more? I asked tentatively. She timidly looked up at me, hesitated for a moment, then gently shook her head. Sister, thank you for saving me, but I understand, in the current situation, food is very scarce. I watched her staring at the empty bowl, looking like she wanted more, and found her a bit adorable. Yeah, out there in the world, a bowl of chicken congee like this might be worth its weight in gold. But what she doesn't know is that on my cruise ship, there's plenty of this food. But I don't know this person in front of me yet, so I can't easily show off my wealth. So I just said vaguely, though it might be a little tight, your meals, I can still afford. With that, I got up and went into the kitchen. I took a clay pot and filled it with chicken congee, then heated a glass of milk and brought it out. Seeing the tray in my hand, Xiao Yan's eyes lit up. Her expression made a warm feeling surge in my heart, but I quickly suppressed it. Experiences from my past life made me unwilling to trust anyone, even if the person in front of me was just a child. At that moment, the system voice suddenly sounded. The cruise ship is about to reach the Antarctic glacier. Please prepare to decide whether to stop. I was startled. Antarctica? How did the flood push me here? I quickly put down the tray and was about to leave. But before I could turn around, my hand was grabbed by a slim, cold little hand. Sister, but I don't know the way back. Xiao Yan's voice was as faint as a mosquito's, with a hint of anxiety. I gently squeezed her hand in return. I'll guide you through the surveillance cameras. Just press the call button on the wall. I pointed at a green button nearby. Xiao Yan looked at the button, then nodded. She obediently let go of my hand. Back in the cruise ship's cockpit, I looked at the huge white glacier in the distance, and couldn't help but sigh. Maybe this is the only piece of land without storms and floods. I said to the system, prepare to dock the cruise ship. Just as I was about to go back and tell that little one about it, I found Xiao Yan wasn't there. All the cutlery that was used had been washed clean and put back on the shelf. I felt a bit strange, and ordered the system to find Xiao Yan. To my surprise, Xiao Yan was in the hall, wandering around confusedly, obviously lost. I connected the communication system. Xiao Yan, can't you find your way? Xiao Yan was startled. I'm sorry, sister. You have nothing to be sorry for. My voice carried a tenderness I didn't even notice. Didn't I tell you could press the button after eating, and I would guide you back? But I didn't want to disturb your rest, sister. Xiao Yan lowered her head, twisting her fingers. It seems this child really knows how to think of others. My heart softened. It's okay. I have nothing to do now. I'll guide you back to your room now. Xiao Yan looked relieved, and smiled at the camera. Late at night, the personal terminal connected to the system vibrated very subtly, indicating an abnormal volume alarm in the cabin. I snapped my eyes open. As expected, I can't trust others after all. Really? I calmly pulled up the surveillance footage. I thought it was this little one up to no good, but on the screen, Xiao Yan was on the bed, curled up into a tiny ball, letting out muffled, painful sobs, her body twitching violently occasionally. So she was having a nightmare. I got up, poured a glass of warm water, and walked into her room. I didn't touch her immediately. I just turned on the soft reading lamp by the bed. The light dispelled the darkness, and she suddenly woke up, bolting upright, fear still lingering in her eyes, like a fawn caught in a trap. Had a nightmare? My voice in the silent room was especially clear. She stares at me blankly. Her chest heaves violently. I hand her the glass of water. She takes it with trembling hands. Her fingertips are ice cold. You're safe here. I look at her. My tone is firm. It carries a calm born of absolute power. Outside the door is 20-centimeter thick alloy armor. There's a high voltage electric fence underwater. Without my authorization, not even a mouse can get in. She holds the cup of water. The warmth seems to seep through her palm and slowly spread into her chilled body. Her rapid breathing slowly calms down. Though her eyes still hold traces of fear, At least she's no longer trembling. Thank you, sis. She looks at me sincerely. I know that in this situation, for you to still accept me is no easy thing. I shake my head. It's okay. Actually, I could use some company too. That's the truth. In a post-apocalyptic world, if a person is isolated for too long, cut off from the world, they can easily have a mental breakdown. So I need a safe, non-threatening person to keep me company. So, in that sense, not only did I save Xiao Yan, her presence is also helping to ease my psychological stress. Xiao Yan looks at me. She seems like she still has something to say, but she holds it back. Sis, I'm not scared anymore. You should go back and rest. I nod. We have plenty of time. There will be plenty of time to talk. The next morning, I slowly open my eyes. Halfway through brushing my teeth, I suddenly remember that I saved someone yesterday. Is Xiao Yan up? While brushing my teeth, I ask the system in my mind. A new menu called Personnel appears on the system panel. Xiao Yan's avatar shows up on it, followed by the name Xia Ziyan. On the far right, her status is listed as awake. There's no movement trail anywhere on the cruise ship, which means after Xiao Yan woke up, she's been staying in her room and hasn't wandered around. This shows that she really is a very cautious and disciplined person. For me, this is absolutely perfect. I get up and head to her room, planning to take her to the dining hall for breakfast. Steaming hot scrambled eggs and fried bacon are served on the table. Xiao Yan quickly thanks me and starts wolfing it down. For a moment, the dining hall is filled only with the clatter of forks against ceramic plates. Looks like she woke up early. She just didn't dare to wake me. I'm about to say something more when the system alert chimes in unexpectedly. Cold and clear. Warning, external hazard level has been raised to level 4. Extreme weather frequency and intensity are increasing. Oceanic turbulence is intensifying. The cruise ship must dock as soon as possible. Host, please increase vigilance. My hand, holding the fork, paused slightly. Level 4 came faster than I expected. Xiao Yan clearly sensed my unease. She looked up. Her clear eyes held a hint of worry. She asked timidly, Sister, is something wrong? It's nothing. I put the last piece of bacon into my mouth. My tone was calm. Don't be scared. We're safe now. She nodded, not fully understanding. She didn't ask further, just lowered her head, silently drinking her bowl of warm milk cereal. Her movements even more cautious. After breakfast, I put down my napkin and stood up. Take your time. I'm going to check the observation deck. Almost immediately, Xiao Yan stood up too. Her voice was soft, but full of dependence. Can I come with you? I glanced at her, said nothing. It was my silent consent. She immediately, like a little tail, quietly followed behind me. Half a step away, the observation deck was at the highest point of the cruise ship. 360-degree circular bulletproof glass presented the outside world, without reservation, to those standing inside. I swiped my system card to open the door, walked in slowly. Even though I was mentally prepared, the sight before me still made me gasp. The tops of buildings I could still see earlier were now completely gone beneath the sea level. Turbid seawater churned, like a pot of boiling yellow soup, devouring everything that once was. Rain was no longer falling, but like a waterfall, violently pounding the glass wall, with a dull, continuous roar. I frowned, walked straight to the control panel, activated the ship's satellite system. The screen flickered a few times, intermittently connected to live feeds from around the world. The signal screen was divided into several blocks, each one showing different regional scenes. In a famous coastal city, a grey-black tsunami wall dozens of meters high advanced with overwhelming force. Former landmark buildings, like children's yachts, were easily toppled and swallowed. After the giant wave, nothing but an ocean, as if that city had never existed. Meanwhile, in the inland mountains, days of heavy rain had softened the slopes. A massive mudslide, like a living brown giant serpent, swooped down the hillside, instantly burying the town at the foot of the mountain. Only a few twisted steel bars stuck out. As for the city's transport hub, a grand viaduct crossing the river, after prolonged soaking and impact from the flood, let out a groan of unbearable strain, then cracked and broke in the middle. The massive bridge deck fell, sending up a huge column of water, along with any lives that might have been on it, sank together into the abyss. My brows unconsciously tightened. The scene before me was far more brutal than what I experienced during my death in my past life. I died too soon. I only saw the beginning of the apocalypse, but I never imagined that after my death, the world would completely slide into such an unfathomable abyss. An inexplicable chill crept silently up my spine. Han Chi and Bai Yi's laughable betrayal in the face of this global, complete physical collapse was pathetically insignificant. I quickly asked in my mind, System, are there level 5 disasters ahead? Is the cruise ship in danger? A level 5 disaster is coming. We need to dock at the Antarctic glacier quickly. Otherwise, the ship will be damaged. It seems I need to dock the ship in Antarctica first, and wait for this level 5 disaster to pass. Sister? Xiao Yan's voice was trembling with tears, pulling me back from my cold thoughts. She was clearly terrified by the raw images of death on the screen. Her body trembled slightly. I turned off the audio of the satellite feed. The control room fell silent. Only the howling rain outside remained. You saw it. I turned around, my voice lower than usual. This is the world now. She didn't dare get too close. standing a few steps behind me to the side, but her gaze was glued to the brutal scenes on the screen, unable to look away. "Are you scared?" I reached out a hand to her. She obediently walked over and took it. Silence spread through the air. Only the relentless rain outside and the distant, inhumanly tragic images on the screen served as background. Maybe it was the contrast between extreme terror and the absolute safety inside the cruise ship that broke through her psychological defenses. Or maybe she finally realized that I was her only barrier between her and that hell outside. Xiao Yan's voice, with a barely suppressed tremble, slowly began, so faint, it was almost drowned out by the rain. I used to be most afraid of rainy days. I led her to sit down by the console without saying a word, just looking at her. It was a tacit permission for her to continue. She lowered her eyes, not daring to look at me, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her clothes. That memory, deep buried, tainted with mold, finally exposed to the light. Our home was very small and very cold. When it rained, the roof would leak. We had to use basins to catch the water drip. Drip, drip. The sound was annoying. Her voice was flat without much emotion, which only made it more desolate. My dad and my mom didn't talk much when they did. It was to fight. She paused, as if choosing her words. They seemed to really hate each other, and they didn't really like me either. They thought I was a burden. When they got off work, they'd go straight to their rooms. They even ate separately. I would cook the meals and put them in their 2 rooms. She looked up, forcing a smile that was uglier than crying. I thought if I was more well-behaved, did all the housework, they might give me a second glance. But they didn't. Her obedience, her hard work. In that cold, suffocating family, like a pebble thrown into a deep pool, didn't even cause a single ripple. Then the heavy rain came, the apocalypse arrived, and they... Her voice grew quieter. They were arguing even louder. Then, they said they'd go out to find me food, and locked me in the room. Before Mom left, she left a pack of cookies in my room. That was, in her memory, the last bit of warmth her mother had given her. The last bit, a warmth tinged with despair and coldness. But it couldn't erase the fact that they had abandoned her. I was alone at home. The water slowly rose. It was freezing. She raised her head and looked at the screen, showing the still raging disaster. Her eyes were vacant. Later, I heard someone say there was food here, so I followed. He finished speaking and clamped his mouth shut, as if he'd used up all his strength. His shoulders slumped slightly. My hand touched her shoulder. I looked steadily into her eyes. "At least you survived." My voice was soft and calm. "As long as you're alive, there's a future." Xiao Yan raised her head, looked at me, and nodded quietly. We had lunch in the main dining hall. Outside the huge floor-to-ceiling windows was a grey curtain of rain. Inside, it was brightly lit. In front of me was a pan-seared silver cod, with lemon butter sauce, alongside perfectly grilled asparagus. Xiao Yan, meanwhile, held a bowl of steaming tonkotsu ramen, eating until her nose was slightly sweaty. She seemed to especially enjoy this warm food. Just as I used my fork to gently separate the white fish meat, the system alert sounded. "Warning, multiple unauthorized life forms detected, approaching within 100 meters. Continuing to approach." I looked up, through the rain-blurred glass, and saw several dark dots bobbing on the rough sea. Survivors. They were crowded on makeshift rafts made of wooden doors, plastic barrels, and even car parts. With the waves, they drifted painfully toward the cruise ship. "Sis, there are people outside." Xiao Yan saw them too, put down her chopsticks, her voice tinged with nervousness and barely perceptible hope. I didn't say a word, continued unhurriedly to finish the last bite of cod, wiped my mouth with a napkin, then got up and walked to the control room. Xiao Yan immediately followed. Through the high-definition external cameras, I could see those people clearly. They were all gaunt and sallow, with cracked lips, drenched by the rain, shivering on crude rafts. These people must be residents living around Antarctica. Seeing the magnificent dawn, they clung to it as a last resort, waving and shouting hoarsely, their voices intermittent in the wind and rain. "Help! Please, give us some food. Open the door. Let us in. My child is dying." Among them, a mother hugging a boy of about 7 or 8 years old stood out particularly. She looked up, rain and tears mingled, her voice piercing. "Kind soul, please have mercy. Don't worry about me. Save my child. Take him away. Just give him a bite to eat. I beg you." The child curled up in her arms, pale and bluish, motionless. I couldn't tell if he was unconscious or if I was just watching expressionless. In this apocalypse, such tragedies are happening every moment. "Sis," Xiao Yan gently tugged my sleeve, her eyes red, pleading. "That little boy is so pitiful. Can we?" I glanced at her. She immediately lowered her head, but still added quietly, "Just help a little, okay?" Looking at the mother's desperate face on the screen, and then at the unbearable look in Xiao Yan's eyes, I let out an almost inaudible sigh. Reason told me this was trouble, but somewhere deep down, there seemed to be a trace of something not entirely extinguished. But my cruise ship was not something just anyone could covet. So I coldly gave the order, "System, launch emergency lifeboat portside 3. Target point set 50 meters to the side of the ship." Command confirmed. A faint mechanical whirring. A lifeboat about 8 meters long, with an enclosed canopy, white lifeboat, glided smoothly from the side of the ship, automatically inflated and deployed, landing steadily on the sea, like a suddenly appearing white shell. The survivors were stunned at first, then burst into ecstatic joy at their escape, frantically paddling their broken rafts to get closer, scrambling to climb inside. Drop basic survival kits to them, 3 days of compressed rations, 10 liters of purified water, basic first aid medicine, a manual water purifier. I calmly issued the command, executing command. Several sealed boxes were precisely delivered onto the lifeboat's canopy. Through the camera, I could see when they received the supplies. They expressed endless thanks toward the ship. Especially, that mother was almost kneeling and kowtowing in the lifeboat, her forehead bleeding from the bows. Xiao Yan also breathed a sigh of relief. A hint of relieved smile appeared on her face. I turned off the external surveillance feed. Doing this much, I've done my utmost. The first few days were calm. The lifeboat floated quietly beside the cruise ship like a cub nestled against a giant. I occasionally used the hidden listening device to check on their activity. They rationed the limited food and water. The kids seemed to have recovered. Everything seemed to be getting better. However, comfort always breeds grief. On the 4th night, through the monitor I heard discordant voices. It was a hoarse male voice filled with obvious discontent. Damn, eating these dry biscuits every day, I'm sick of the bland taste. This lifeboat is packed like sardines. Another shrill voice chimed in. Yeah, look at that big cruise ship, all lit up. It must be so comfortable inside. There's probably mountains of food and drink. And they give us this pittance, like we're beggars. Fortune favors the bold. I think we should find a way in. No, please don't. It was the mother's anxious voice. They already saved us, gave us food and shelter. That's already a lot. We can't be ungrateful. Bah! The horseman immediately snapped. What the hell do you know, woman? These rich people are the most cold-hearted. They're holed up in comfort while we suffer out here. If they just let a little slip through their fingers, it'd be enough for us to feast on. They're just pretending to be good. Their heated argument carried every word into the control room. I sat in the large command chair, the screen in front of me displaying a live feed from inside the lifeboat. A cold smile curled my lips. And so, human nature can't withstand temptation. I set all the security systems, and went back to my room to rest. The next morning, what was bound to happen happened. The piercing intrusion alarm sounded. On the screen, the horse guy and the sly one, leading 5 or 6 people, holding a fire axe from the lifeboat and iron bars, were madly chopping and prying at the cruise ship's side-sealed alloy door. That mother and another young man stayed in the lifeboat, too scared to come out. Hey, you in there, listen up. Open the damn door. Hand over all the good food. Otherwise, when we get in, you might not even leave in one piece. Foul language mixed with the crazy banging was unceasing. Xiao Yan's face turned pale with fear. She ran to the control room. When I thought she was going to hide behind me, I saw in her hand, she was holding a knife she had gotten from the kitchen. Her whole body trembling, yet with unwavering determination, she stepped in front of me, slightly to the side. Her voice was trembling, but unusually clear. Sis, big sis, don't be afraid. I'll protect you. I looked at this girl who, despite her fear, was still trying to protect me. The anger that had risen in my heart from the betrayal by outsiders dissipated a little. It dissipated a little. I reached out and gently ruffled her hair. The motion was a bit awkward, but carried a hint of warmth. Stand behind me, I said. Then I turned my gaze back to the screen, locked onto the thugs who were violently attacking the hatch. My eyes instantly turned cold. System, initiate the expulsion protocol. Target area, port side hatch of the cruise ship. All unauthorized life forms. Command confirmed. High voltage motor protective grid. Activate on the ship's side. The metal hole near the hatch instantaneously erupted with dazzling blue and white arcs of electricity, emitting a teeth-grinding crackling sound, forming an invisible net of death. The few people who were banging on the door had no time to react at all. The moment they touched the electric arcs, they let out harrowing screams. Their bodies convulsed violently and were flung away by the powerful cone. With several splashes, they crashed heavily into the murky, cold seawater. Splashes rose, and then there was silence. On the sea surface, only the lonely lifeboat remained, floating gently. The world was calm. I turned off the alarm and the surveillance screens. I took Xiao Yan's slightly cold hand. Let's go. My tone returned to its usual indifference. What do you want for lunch? Xiao Yan turned and glanced at the screen that had returned to calm, then looked back at me. She held my hand tightly. You're amazing, sis. I was about to take her away when the external listening device picked up faint voices from the lifeboat. Faint voices from the lifeboat. Mom, it was the little boy's voice, filled with confusion and a hint of barely perceptible fear. Uncle and the others have been gone a long time. Did they find a better place? Aren't they coming back? After a brief silence, the mother's voice came, deliberately softened but barely hiding a tremble. Maybe so. They They maybe found a safer place. Her voice was hoarse, filled with deep uncertainty and fear. Obviously, even she herself couldn't believe this explanation. I stopped in my tracks. My eyes turned slightly cold. Self-deception is sometimes more pathetic than facing cruelty head-on. I signaled Xiao Yan to wait a moment and sat back down at the console. With a light tap of my finger, I connected the external communicator to the lifeboat. They're all dead. They're all dead. My voice, through the speaker, clearly reached the cramped lifeboat, calm, without a single ripple, as if stating a very ordinary fact. Ah! From the communicator came the mother's short scream of surprise, followed by the whimpering of a frightened child. After a brief moment of chaos, I spoke again, my tone still flat. Don't be scared, you weren't involved. You didn't cheer them on. Your earlier attempts to stop them I saw clearly. Inside the lifeboat a dead silence fell. The only sound was the woman's heavy, stifled breathing. So you and your child and that young man can stay here. The basic survival supplies I promised earlier I'll still provide as usual. The communicator was silent for a few seconds. Then came the woman's voice, thick with tears almost incoherent, a mix of gratitude and fear. Thank you for still giving us a chance to live. I swear on my child's life, we will never have any ill intentions toward you. We, just a little, just enough to survive. Really, thank you. Her voice was filled with the relief of survival and a nearly humble promise. Remember what you said, I said finally, and cut the communication. Whether grateful and indebted or fearful and submissive, it doesn't matter. I'm not the kind of person who is cold-hearted enough to massacre everyone. I stood up and looked at Xiao Yan beside me. The fear on her face had faded. Replacing it was a complex emotion, as if she understood something yet seemed even more confused. Let's go, I said again, my tone softened a bit. What do you want for lunch? Today I can add an extra mango pudding. Xiao Yan looked up at me. In those clear eyes there seemed to be something different. It looked like admiration, or perhaps adoration. She nodded firmly and whispered, okay. However, less than a week of peace had passed. One afternoon Xiao Yan and I were passing time in the library on the third deck of the cruise ship. The huge circular bookshelves rose to the dome. The air was filled with the calm scent of old books and solid wood. Xiao Yan stood on tiptoes straining to reach the upper shelf. For a guidebook on marine fish I casually helped her take it down. She hugged the thick book, a shy smile spreading across her face. Just as she opened the hardcover, the monotone system alert broke the silence. Alert multiple. Medium-sized vessels detected approaching. Distance, 500 meters. Assessed as potential threat. Advised standby. I froze mid-motion. The ease on my face vanished instantly. Xiao Yan immediately closed her book and looked at me nervously. Go to your room. Lock the door. My voice was steady, but carried an undeniable command. She nodded immediately, without asking a single question, and left the library quickly, clutching her book. I turned and headed to the control room. On the massive circular surveillance screen wall, multiple feeds had already locked on and zoomed in on the approaching intruders. They weren't the ramshackle rafts we'd seen before, or the crude lifeboats. It was a small fleet. Floating there were 3 obviously modified medium fishing boats. Their hulls were reinforced with steel plates, and on the decks, welded brackets were visible, along with tarp-covered bulges. The silhouettes vaguely suggested weapon shapes. They formed a loose encirclement formation, and were steadily closing in on the dawn. At the bow of one ship, a man in a black waterproof tactical suit, tall and imposing, was holding a megaphone. His voice carried through the rain, though slightly distorted by the electronics, but his tone had a deliberately crafted undeniable authority. Friends of the Dawn, please respond. We are the exploration team of the Sea Dragon Guild. We mean no harm. I repeat, no harm. Seeing this magnificent cruise ship of yours, the owner must be a capable survivor. In these apocalyptic times, going it alone is always tough. Cooperation leads to mutual benefit. We hope to establish contact with you and start a dialogue. Win-win cooperation. A cold sneer curled at the corner of my mouth. I had heard this kind of sanctimonious talk way too many times in my past life. In the apocalypse, so-called cooperation is often just a veneer of warmth before the law of the jungle. I didn't immediately respond to their hails. Instead, I ordered in a low voice, "System, fully scan the approaching fleet, assess their armament level, and potential threat level." The light in the control room is dim. Only the glow of the screen reflects on my face. The system interface pops up, data streams scrolling rapidly. Scan complete. Target fleet analysis. 3 modified fishing boats, all detected with high explosive signatures and energy signatures of medium caliber automatic weapons. 28 life signals detected. Individual physiological indicators show they are well trained. Tactical formation remains intact. Overall assessment, high threat level. Strongly recommend activating defensive protocols. High. That rating feels like a cold stone sinking into my heart. This is completely different from those mobs who fought on raw courage for a bite to eat. Completely different. This is an organized, equipped, even a military force that may have seen combat. Their goal, it's far more than just food. In their eyes, my dawn is likely a mobile mountain of gold with endless supplies. I take a deep breath. My gaze sharpens. My fingers lightly tap the console. I open the external radio channel. My voice transmits through the equipment, calm and detached. This is the dawn. State your purpose. Almost the moment my words fade, the tall man's voice comes through the radio immediately, carrying a hint of barely perceptible amusement, as if he expected my response. A wise choice. Master of the Dawn. Our purpose is simple. Share resources. Exchange what we have. Our union has capability, intelligence, and experience surviving at sea. And you have this incredible ship. Together, we can all live better in this apocalypse. Even rebuild order. His words are tempting, but on the system screen, that bright red high threat rating is like a sharp thorn, constantly reminding me of the fangs hidden beneath his words. I didn't answer right away. In the control room, all that was left was the radio, faint static coming through, and the rain outside growing heavier. Sorry, I don't need to cooperate with anyone right now. Please find someone else. My tone was cold and distant. The other end of the radio was silent for a long time. Finally, that voice became noticeably lower. I think you're just acting on impulse. That's why you rejected the offer. It's fine. We're patient. We can wait. Sure enough, the fleet didn't leave. Instead, they started circling around me, like a pack of sharks eyeing their prey. That night, I tossed and turned. The strength of this fleet, and the malice hidden behind the facade of cooperation, were not to be underestimated. I felt like I was facing the biggest challenge since the apocalypse. I couldn't sleep at all, so I just sat up in bed. I went to Xiao Yan's room. I gently knocked on her door. Soon, she opened the door, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Sister, what's wrong? Her voice sounded confused. Those people outside are dangerous. As I walked in, I frowned and voiced my concerns. After talking to them today, I told Xiao Yan everything. Seeing how worried I was, Xiao Yan gently hugged me. Don't worry, sister. No matter what, I'll protect you. Seeing her still so young, yet stubbornly wanting to protect me, a warmth surged in my heart, and I gradually found strength. They're just a bunch of pirates. I'll find a way, I thought to myself. The next morning, I woke up with 2 huge dark circles under my eyes. Xiao Yan had already made breakfast, and was waiting for me in the kitchen. Seeing how tired I looked, she had a look of deep concern on her face. Sister, did you not get enough rest? I smiled and ruffled her hair. Yeah, I didn't sleep well, but it's okay. Once I take care of them today, I'll be able to sleep soundly. After breakfast, I hurried to the control room. Soon after, they sent a radio communication request. Well, facing such a huge vault, how could they stay patient? I sneered and answered the call. The voice on the other end carried a hypocritical smile. To show sincerity, we will send a representative carrying our stock of precious medicines and rare parts. We hope to discuss the details of cooperation with you in person. Soon, from one of the modified fishing boats, a small assault boat was launched. A middle-aged man in ordinary waterproof clothing, with a kind-looking face, drove the boat alone slowly toward the dawn. In his hand, he indeed carried a silver-sealed case. A harmless smile hung on his face. He even waved friendly toward the cruise ship. Xiao Yan, at some point, had quietly come to the door of the control room again. She was gripping the door frame, nervously watching the screen. Sister, they really seem sincere. I didn't answer. My gaze locked onto that silver case. The system's high-risk alert hadn't cleared. The scan showed an abnormal structure. Inside, besides the declared supplies, there was also a high-precision, high-energy unknown electronic device. Zoom in and scan. Analyze the energy signature. I ordered coldly. Data flashed on the screen, mapping out the device's internal structure. The energy flow pattern closely matched a military-grade electronic pulse jammer. Highly consistent. I sneered inwardly. First, act weak. Send a seemingly harmless representative, approaching with a gift. Once within effective range, activate the jammer to disable my external defenses and communications. Then, behind, the 2 armed fishing boats lurking would pounce immediately. What a clever plan. I really shouldn't underestimate these people. Sister? Xiao Yan, seeing I wasn't speaking, called out softly again. Just then, on the surveillance feed, that representative had already brought the assault boat to a stop below the cruise ship's side. Looking up, still smiling, he reached out as if to open that silver case. Now's the time. Without hesitation, I pressed a prominent red button on the console. The system activated the port side high-pressure water cannon. Target below. The assault boat and personnel. Execute expulsion procedure. Command confirmed. On the cruise ship side, an inconspicuous panel slid open. A thick alloy cannon barrel extended instantly. The representative below froze, his smile turning into terror. Before he could even react, a visible, dense, solid water jet, like a giant's fist, with incredible pressure and speed, blasted out. That wasn't ordinary water. It was a high-pressure spray strong enough to shatter concrete. The jet hit the front of the assault boat precisely. Wood chips and metal fragments exploded instantly. That small boat, as if struck by a giant hammer, lurched violently and rolled backward. The man pretending to be friendly on board didn't even have time to swing before being brutally flung off by the immense impact. Together with that silver case hiding the malicious device, they drew a sorry arc through the air and crashed into the turbulent sea with a splash, instantly swallowed by the waves. On the sea surface, only some floating debris remained. The control room was dead silent. Xiao Yan covered her mouth, eyes wide, her body trembling uncontrollably. Clearly, she was shocked by this thunderous move and its brutal result. Almost at the same time, over the public radio channel, the pirate leader's furious roar came through, completely tearing off the mask of hypocrisy. You bastard, you asked for it. Do you think that Rust Bucket can protect you forever? You can't hide in that tin can forever. We'll drag you out sooner or later. His voice was filled with murderous rage. I picked up the communicator, my voice transmitted through the current, calm without a single ripple, even with a hint of disdain. I'm tougher than you think. With that, I cut the comms. The two remaining modified fishing boats outside seemed intimidated and stopped approaching for now, but they still loitered nearby. The pirates' retaliation came quickly. Just after I used the water cannon to repel their representative, in less than half an hour, the system warned again. Warning, hostile unit detected, approaching the port side lifeboat. Intent unknown. I immediately pulled up the surveillance feed, and sure enough, from the two modified fishing boats earlier, a dinghy had separated, carrying four armed, fierce-looking pirates, rapidly approaching the white lifeboat attached to the cruise liner. Their intentions were crystal clear. They wanted to forcibly take the people on that lifeboat, either as hostages or to extract information about the cruise ship, or simply to vent their frustration from earlier. The three people in the lifeboat had clearly noticed the approaching danger. The mother shielded her child behind her in terror, while the quiet young man grabbed the only weapon he could find in the lifeboat, a short stick, and stood in front of the hatch. Even though his face was pale and his arms were trembling slightly, the pirate's dinghy had already pulled alongside. One burly pirate grinned, reaching out, about to grab the lifeboat's railing. System, my voice cold. Activate the lifeboat's non-lethal electric defense field. 3-meter radius. Instant discharge. Command confirmed. Just as the pirate's hand was about to touch the lifeboat, the air around the lifeboat suddenly exploded with blinding blue-white arcs of electricity, emitting a harsh crackling sound. Caught off guard, the pirates were instantly hit by a high-voltage charge, screaming in agony, their bodies convulsing violently as they were thrown back, splashing into the water one after another, struggling on the surface, incapacitated for the moment. Their dinghy also lost control, spinning in place. The three people in the lifeboat were still in shock. The young man's short stick clattered and fell to the ground. The mother and son clung tightly to each other. Their faces were deathly pale. I watched the monitor, my brow furrowed slightly. The lifeboat was exposed. Its defenses were weak. This time it was lucky. What about next time? System, I made a decision. In the lower level of Sector C, partition off an independent unit, equipped with basic living facilities, completely physically isolated from the main area. Command executing. Unit ready. I connected the internal communication to the lifeboat. The mother's trembling voice came through immediately. Thank you. You saved us again. Listen, I interrupted her. My tone brooked no argument. The lifeboat is clearly unsafe. Now, the side of the cruise ship will open a temporary entrance. You have 3 minutes. Bring all your personal belongings. Enter the designated area. Don't be late. Having said that, I ignored their reactions, directly manipulating the system. Above the waterline of the cruise ship, in an inconspicuous location, opened a sealed hatch barely wide enough for one person. A narrow gangway slowly extended. Through the monitor, I saw the three of them, scrambling, carrying their meager belongings, hastily crossing the gangway, entered the cruise ship. The hatch quickly closed and locked behind them. They were now at the bottom level of the cruise ship, a modified independent area, with a few simple cabins, independent ventilation and water supply systems, and a common room equipped with basic kitchenware, and stocked with a small amount of food, as a communal activity area. There are no windows here. The only exit is that heavy isolation door that only opens with my authorization. They can't enter the main body of the cruise ship. They can't access any core facilities. Their movements are confined to this safe room, and they're under constant surveillance. On the main screen, I watch them wandering aimlessly in the empty corridors. The mother clutches her child tightly, while the young man cautiously eyes this steel cage. This is fine. It ensures their basic safety, eliminates vulnerabilities that external threats could exploit, and it ensures they won't cause any unnecessary trouble on my turf. Over the next 2 days, those two modified fishing boats like lingering ghosts, kept circling the dawn about a nautical mile away. They didn't try to get closer, nor did they provoke any further, but this silent standoff was more unsettling than a direct attack. I stood at the console, the dots on the screen representing those two ships. They were like patient hounds, waiting for their prey to show a weakness. Sis, they're still not leaving. Xiao Yan walks over with a glass of warm water. Her voice is filled with concern. She's been noticeably quieter these days. That brief but intense conflict left a mark on her heart. They're waiting. I take the glass. In a flat tone. For what? For us to let our guard down. For us to slip up. Or I pause. My eyes scan the screen. The light dots representing those two ships. Wait for a reason that will make them launch an all-out attack at any cost. Actually, I'm not without the ability to fight back. The defensive systems on the Dawn go far beyond water cannons and electric nets. More powerful weapon modules are in a dormant state. If I wanted to, I could send those two modified fishing boats to the bottom of the sea. But my finger hovers over the rows of buttons representing various heavy weapons. But I can't bring myself to press them. An invisible resistance lingers in my heart. On those two ships are real people. Even though they're armed to the teeth with ill intent, before they fire the first shot, if I strike first and destroy them completely, this feeling and before, fighting back against those who directly attacked the cruise ship who threatened my life is completely different in nature. The last shred of humanity in my heart is like a tiny thorn, pricking the edge of reason. Weak but stubborn, it reminds me that once I cross this line, actively taking their lives, then what's the difference between me and those who recklessly plunder in this apocalypse, who see human life as worthless? Where is the line? Will there come a day when I become just like them, crushing others without hesitation just to eliminate all potential threats? Sis Xiaoyan gently tugs my sleeve, pulling me back from my cold thoughts. I withdraw my hand and close the attack options interface. It's nothing. I rub my temples. They won't dare make a move. Even so, but I know this stalemate can't last forever. My hesitation, my principles, at some point, might become fatal weaknesses, but for now, I still can't convince myself to strike first for a danger that hasn't happened yet. To strike first. Sis Xiaoyan looks at the surveillance screen, at those two stubborn dots, and whispers a suggestion. They won't leave. Can't we just leave? Can't this ship sail away? I was a bit stunned. This simple idea had me stuck in a defensive and confrontational mindset. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Yeah, why stay here passively and waste time with them? The Dawn is a mobile fortress, not a stationary target. Our top priority is to dock at the Antarctic glacier before the level 5 disaster hits. Otherwise, even a cruise ship facing that kind of catastrophe is dangerous. You're right. Let's go. Once the decision was made, I didn't hesitate. I sat firmly at the console and started the main engines. A low rumble through the hull could be heard faintly. The Dawn, this sleeping giant, began to awaken. The massive hull slowly adjusted its direction, cutting through the murky waves, heading away from the coast into deeper waters. Through the rear monitor, I saw the two pirate ships initially try to follow, but their modified fishing boats in terms of speed and endurance were no match for the Dawn. The massive cruise liner gradually accelerated, soon leaving those two dots far behind. They eventually vanished completely below the horizon. The crisis was temporarily resolved. For the next 2 weeks, we sailed across the vast ocean. Outside the window was endless grey seawater and relentless rain. It felt like the whole world had only this one ship left. During this time, Xiaoyan and I grew closer. She's a smart and attentive kid. She quickly got the hang of some non-core operations on the cruise. I taught her how to check supply lists, manage basic energy distribution, and even some simple equipment maintenance. She learned fast. Her eyes always showed a focus and joy that came from being trusted. Sis, the climate control in Zone A3 is running normally. Sis, I've updated today's yield record for the vegetable growing area. She gradually became my reliable little helper for handling daily tasks. This mutual understanding made the huge cruise ship feel less empty and cold, and brought a hint of indescribable life. The 3 people in quarantine were also behaving very well. Occasionally, I'd have brief conversations with them through internal communication. That mother's name is Li Wuyuan, always soft-spoken, with gratitude. Her son is Dudu, 7 years old, a bit timid, but well-behaved. I allowed Li Wuyuan to use the small kitchen in quarantine. Sometimes she'd make simple snacks and send them out to Xiaoyan through the supply hatch, a clumsy way of showing gratitude. That young man is Xiao Yihan, a mechanical engineering student from the Maritime University. He was interning at the port when the apocalypse hit. A man of few words, but his eyes showed the focus and practicality of a technician. During one conversation, he hesitantly offered, if there were any mechanical equipment needing maintenance or inspection, he might be able to help. I didn't agree right away, but I kept that in mind. A cook, a mechanical engineering student on the long voyage ahead, their skills might not be useless after all. Li Wuyuan, that mother really has magic hands. Actually, through the supply hatch, I gave her just the most basic flour, some root vegetables that keep well, and limited seasonings. She could always find ways to make mouth-watering food. Sometimes a few golden crispy pancakes with scallions. Sometimes a steaming hot bowl of rich, hand-pulled noodles. She could even use simple beans and spices to ferment a unique sauce. At first, she only made some occasionally, carefully, passing them through the hatch, with a neatly written note saying, just a small token, please try it. Once, she sent a small dish of freshly fried spring rolls. The wrappers were as thin as cicada wings, fried to perfection, golden and crispy. The filling was finely shredded vegetables, layered in texture. Xiaoyan and I were stunned after tasting them. Xiaoyan's eyes sparkled and mumbled, "Sister, this is so good." I chewed slowly, feeling the long-lost culinary artistry's impact on my taste buds, not just eating to survive. Such refined flavors were a luxury in the apocalypse. This undeniable talent, and the fact that the mother and son had always been law-abiding, gradually tipped the scales in my mind. After a few days of observation and consideration, I made a decision. I used the internal comms to announce to the 3 in quarantine, starting today, you can have access to some common areas of the cruise ship, including the main kitchen, the dining room, and the adjacent lounge. Your movement is limited to these areas only, and you are not allowed to enter other cabins without permission. Your access has been logged into the system. There was a moment of silence on the comms, then Li Wuyuan's voice, choked with emotion, kept thanking me. Thank you so much. We will follow the rules, and we won't wander off. Xiao Yihang also assured in a deep voice. Please rest assured. Of course, I'm not completely at ease with the core personnel on the management panel. I set the permission level for the 3 of them to high priority. This means every move they make in public areas is under covert surveillance. The system analyzes their behavior patterns in real time. If it detects any attempt to exceed authority, sabotage, or abnormal gatherings, it alerts me immediately. After the permissions were granted, Li Wuyuan poured almost all of her gratitude into the kitchen. She no longer just made snacks occasionally, but voluntarily began preparing 3 meals a day for us. She seemed to adapt quickly to the advanced equipment in the cruise ship kitchen. With limited ingredients, combined with the supplies I had stocked in the system warehouse, she could cook amazing dishes. Fresh baked bread, soup stewed to perfection, and even occasionally using fresh herbs grown in the planting zone to add flavor. The dining room began to fill with a true sense of home cooking. Xiao Yan was noticeably happier than before, with more color in her cheeks. She would sometimes run to the kitchen and watch Li Wuyuan work with curiosity. Li Wuyuan would gently teach her a few simple tricks. I watched it all, still staying alert, but that tight string deep inside me seemed to loosen a bit, thanks to the warm food and the relatively harmonious atmosphere. The dawn sails across an endless water world, like a moving lighthouse. Inevitably, it attracts scattered survivors. I'm not entirely cold-blooded, as long as I ensure my own safety. I'll lend a hand when I see fit. But human greed is magnified to the extreme in this apocalypse. Almost every so often, someone after I provide initial aid, tries to use force or trickery to take over this ship. Some pretend to be sick to get on board, tempting an inside job. Some hide in my lifeboat, floating for days, observing, secretly, looking for defense gaps, and others directly drive modified small boats, trying to forcibly board. To these people, I show no mercy. High-pressure water cannons, electrified nets, anesthetic gas, the Dawn's defense system, makes them clearly understand, coveting this place, comes at the cost of their lives. I display their humiliation and fate clearly to other rescued people. Cold deterrence is the most effective way to maintain order. Most survivors are placed on the cruise's periphery. On lifeboats or makeshift rafts, I provide basic survival supplies, but refuse them to come close. It's not that I'm naturally suspicious, but bloody lessons have taught me. Excessive mercy only invites destruction. Only a very few, 3 people, after undergoing strict observation and tests, were allowed inside the cruise, and granted limited access. I chose these people with extreme caution, even they passed the test of humanity. Of these 3, the first is Old Chen. He was on a raft that was about to fall apart, when found. The young people traveling with him all died of hunger, thirst, and despair one after another. Only he, relying on his rich maritime survival experience and tenacious will, persevered to the end. This old captain is taciturn, but his eyes are steady. In terms of machinery and equipment, he has an almost instinctive acumen. Once, I allowed him to enter the periphery of the engine room after assisting with inspections. He accurately identified a potential hazard. The second is a doctor. We all call her Dr. Su. She was a battlefield surgeon. When I found her, she was on a floating roof, using extremely crude tools for several wounded survivors, treating wounds, although she herself looked extremely weak. Last is Chuan. Although he is somewhat taciturn, but for the arrival of danger, he has an extraordinary acuity and vigilance. I think it's always right to keep him by my side, and the aura about him always makes me feel like he once received some professional training. These 3 people, together with Li Wuyuan and Xiao Yihang from before, form the core of the cruise ship's interior. Peripheral members, they are allowed at specific times to use the dining room, some common lounges, and a dedicated workshop. But their cabin area from the core living area of me and Xiao Yan is completely isolated, and all of their permissions are all on the system's key attention list. Any abnormal behavior will trigger an alarm. Several months passed on the vast open sea. Relying on the Dawn's powerful performance and the nearly unlimited supplies in the system warehouse, we not only survived, but inside the cruise ship, a small but orderly community gradually formed. Li Wuyuan, with her amazing cooking skills, soothed everyone's stomachs. Old Chen and Dr. Su, one maintained the ship's health, the other looked after the crew's health. Xiao Yihang, in his workshop, used available materials to make or improve tools, showing remarkable practical skills. And the silent Chuan took on the duties of internal patrol and maintaining order. His sharp eyes and calm demeanor were a deterrent in themselves. Their character had been rigorously tested, and they deeply understood who it was that gave them this refuge in the apocalypse, who provided the safety and stability far beyond the outside world. Before I knew it, a small team centered around me, with extremely high loyalty, had taken shape. We didn't talk much, but a single look, a simple order, was quickly understood and executed. Xiao Yan changed the most. She was no longer the girl hiding behind, shivering with fear. She helped me manage daily affairs, coordinated the needs of the members, and even began following Dr. Su to learn basic medical knowledge, and following Old Chen to understand the basic operations of the ship. That afternoon, we had just finished a very cozy lunch, when the system's familiar and chilling danger alarm pierced through the air again, instantly shattering the peace. Warning, multiple armed vessels detected, approaching. Signal characteristics match database records, identified as Sea Dragon Guild fleet. My heart tightened. I immediately stood up. Everyone saw my expression change. The ease on my face disappeared instantly. None of them said a word. None asked what happened. They just stared at me nervously. I looked around, calmly ordered everyone to stay put, then turned and glanced at Xiao Yan, gestured for him to follow me. Xiao Yan understood immediately, and followed closely. We entered the control room together. On the huge circular screen, the approaching fleet was clearly displayed. Still those modified fishing boats, but the number had increased from 2 to 5, and the modifications were more extreme. More steel plates welded on, weapons on deck near visible. One of the larger boats seemed to have some kind of food rocket launcher. An old acquaintance, I said coldly, fingers quickly working the console. System. Full scan and analyze their changes. Scan complete. Target fleet size increase. 3 new modified ships. Weapon systems upgraded. Rocket-propelled grenade launcher detected. Heavy machine gun positions increased to 6. Estimated 65 to 70 personnel. Threat level extremely high. Recommend activating highest defense protocol. They have more people now, and better weapons. Xiao Yan looked at the screen, at the analyzed data, frowning slightly. But his voice wasn't panicked, only calm judgment. Looks like they haven't been idle these months. Gathered a bunch of like-minded scum. I glanced at him, a bit surprised. In just a few months, the girl I once needed to protect could already calmly analyze the enemy. Right, I nodded, my gaze back on the screen, on that clearly stronger and hostile pirate fleet. They've come back, dead set on taking us this time. The control room was tense, only the faint hum of instruments. On the screen, the pirate fleet had already formed up, like sharks smelling blood, slowly closing in. Seeing this, you've got a tough fight ahead. I patched into the intercom, and ordered calmly, all crew, report to the control room. Xiao Yan heard the sound. At the console beside, granted several people temporary access to the control room. While waiting for the crew to arrive, a radio communication request in front of me suddenly rang. Without a second thought, I knew who it was. I sneered and gently pressed answer. After a harsh static noise, in the public radio channel, came the voice of that pirate leader from memory, arrogant and full of hatred. Shuguang, didn't expect this, did you? We're back again. The last time score. This time I'll settle it with interest. If you know what's good for you, shut down all defense systems immediately, and surrender quietly. For the sake of this ship of yours, maybe I'll spare your life. Expressionless, I picked up the communicator. My voice traveled through the radio waves, cold and without a trace of emotion. Looks like the last lesson wasn't deep enough. This time you've come in a group to die. You're asking for it. The other side was clearly completely enraged. He roared, get them, tear them apart. With the order given from the pirate fleet, 3 ships immediately broke off. Extremely fast armed speedboats, engines roaring, like arrows from the string, from different directions, charged straight at the Shuguang. The pirates on the sea mounted heavy machine guns and rocket launchers, fierce and murderous. At this moment, the crew members had all arrived. Their faces showed great tension. Only a Chuan was still his usual silent self. All hands, defense, battle stations. My voice was not loud, yet clearly reached every crew member's ears. My voice had no panic, only absolute calm, and unquestionable authority. A Chuan, take Xiao Yihan to the port defense point. Operate the high-pressure water cannon and electrified net. Prioritize striking the speedboats and personnel trying to board. Yes, a Chuan responded in a low voice. His sharp eyes shone with determination. After receiving my command, he immediately rushed out of the control room with Xiao Yihan. If my judgment is correct, in terms of operating weapons, he has experience. Old Chen, go to the engine room and the energy core area. Ensure the power and defense system's energy supply is absolutely stable. Also monitor the whole structure. Report any anomalies immediately. Understood. Leave it to me. Old Chen's voice was steady and powerful. He turned and quickly walked to the lower deck. Dr. Su, please stand by. We may have casualties. I'm not sure how intense this fight will be, but it's best to prepare for the worst. Already prepared. Dr. Su's response was concise and professional. Li Wuyuan, go check all the security systems on the cruise ship. Make sure they're running properly. Though her face was pale, Li Wuyuan nodded firmly. Don't worry, I'm on it. Finally, Xiao Yan and I shared a knowing look, and nodded. I took a deep breath, my gaze returning to the main console, my fingers swiping quickly across the virtual interface, activating the cruise ship's deeper defense systems. System activating active defense matrix. Locking onto all fast-moving targets. Priority intercept rockets and other projectiles. Command confirmed. Active defense matrix activated. Targets locking. The pirate speedboats weaved through the rain, like annoying water striders. They'd clearly learned their lesson. Not rushing in recklessly. Instead, using speed and agility, they circled the cruise ship. Sis, came Chuan's calm voice over the internal comm, with a hint of subtle mockery. They're scanning the hull with thermal imaging, looking for weak points in the defense, or maybe ventilation ducts. Almost simultaneously, Chen's steady report came from the engine room. Captain, detecting intermittent directional electronic interference. Not strong, but annoying, like they're probing our defense systems. I raised an eyebrow. Well, after a few months, these pirates have upgraded their toys, playing with tech now. Can you handle it? I ask. Piece of cake. Chen's reply carried the confidence of a technician. I've switched to a backup line. The entire cruise ship shield values are bouncing around randomly. Let them figure that out. On the other side, Xiao Yihang's voice carried a hint of excitement. Cut in. He was obviously excited about this live combat test. Chuan, they're scanning Sector 3 forward left. That's where the armor is thickest. Want to give them a surprise? Chuan's voice remained flat. Hold steady. Wait till they get closer. Give them a shower with the water cannons. Nice work. I praised him. Then I turned my gaze to the main screen. Then we shouldn't just take hits without fighting back. My hands moved quickly across the console. I started activating the cruise ship's weapon systems. System, launch the first wave of swarm drones. Target the enemy speedboats, engines and external sensors. Execute harassment attacks. Swarm release. On the deck sides, open several hidden launch ports. Dozens of small drones, like a startled swarm, silently disappear into the rain curtain, heading toward the few speedboats still trying to find weaknesses. Darting forward, port water cannons, put some pressure on them. Chuan and Xiao Yihang immediately execute. Thick water jets like giant arms sweep across. Although not directly hitting the fast-moving speedboats, the huge waves stirred up and turbulent currents are enough to make those small boats pitch and roll, making them hard to maneuver. Starboard flares, ready to light up their hull. Several bright flares shot toward the pirate team's direction. Although non-lethal, in the dark rain curtain, they traced blinding trails, clearly marking their positions, more like a blatant provocation. The pirates' electromagnetic interference instantly became chaotic. Obviously, our relaxed counterattack plus the buzzing harassment of the drones had them flustered. I leaned back comfortably in my command chair, watching the screen, the pirates who are thrown into disarray. It's great to have capable subordinates. Everyone becomes worry-free and happy. Those darting pirate speedboats are really out of luck. Chuan and Xiao Yihang operate the high-pressure water cannons, as if they have eyes, taking advantage of the speedboats being disoriented by the drones and tossed around by huge waves. They land a few precise hits. One of the speedboats is hit square in the side by a thick water jet, and capsized like a toy. The pirates on board are like dumplings being dropped, splashing into the water. Another speedboat is hit in the stern by the water cannon, its engine smoking and spinning in flight, completely neutralized. The remaining speedboat, seeing this, don't dare to linger. They floor the throttle and flee back to the main fleet without looking back. The radio goes silent for a moment. Then comes the pirate leader's furious yet slightly incredulous roar. I didn't expect a ship like yours to have so many weapons. This time I was unprepared. Next time, I won't let you escape. The several large modified fishing boats grudgingly turn around, leaving a messy wake, and quickly disappear into the misty rain and the distant raging waves. They're gone. We won. Xiao Yan is the first to cheer, her voice full of joy. It's really great. Old Chen's voice trembles with excitement. Although he sounded relaxed earlier, in fact, his heart was also in his throat. Drone recovered. Minor damage, Xiao Yihang reported. Minor damage. So can you fix it? Of course I can, Xiao Yihang replied smugly. Listening to the comm channel, the team members' voices full of joy and pride, I looked at the screen, the sea now empty. My mood also brightened. My decision to keep these people was definitely right. If it was just me alone, I'm afraid I'd really struggle with this kind of crisis. What are you thinking, sis? Xiao Yan walked over and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. I looked up and smiled at her. I was thinking, where should we go next? Xiao Yan heard this, looked at the screen, then turned to me. Anywhere is fine. As long as you're here, I'm not afraid of anything. I looked at the screen, the rough sea, and felt a sense of peace. I don't know what the future holds, but I believe with this cruise ship, and the people I trust by my side, I can handle any crisis. Soon we reached the Antarctic glacier to dock, waiting out the level 5 disaster. On the ship's radio, a national broadcast came through. Hello everyone. The nation's first maritime safe zone has been established. A sea fortress built from countless aircraft carriers. Please wait for rescue. The nation stands. The people stand. We exchanged excited smiles,